The earliest known event in the FNAF timeline predates the franchise's main story by over 40 years, involving a tragic family incident that indirectly set the stage for everything that followed. Before the animatronics, before the murders, before the haunted pizzerias that would become synonymous with terror, there was a man named William Afton and his partner Henry Emily, two entrepreneurs with a dream of bringing joy to children through entertainment and robotics. What started as an innocent business venture in the early days of animatronic technology became the foundation for one of the most complex and disturbing narratives in gaming history. A story that spans decades and involves child murders, supernatural possession, corporate cover ups, and a cycle of vengeance that refuses to end. This is not a simple tale of a haunted restaurant. This is the story of how ambition and grief twisted into obsession, how cutting edge technology became a prison for tortured souls, and how one man's descent into madness created a legacy of horror that would outlive him by generations. The timeline of Five Nights at Freddy's is a puzzle that has taken years to assemble, with each game adding new pieces while simultaneously recontextualizing everything that came before. It's a narrative told backwards and forwards, through minigames and hidden details, through cryptic phone calls and newspaper clippings, through Easter eggs that only reveal their meaning when you understand the full picture. The story touches on themes that go far beyond jump scares, exploring what happens when parents fail to protect their children, when corporations prioritize profit over safety, when guilt transforms into something darker than remorse, and when the dead refuse to rest because justice was never served. At its core, this is a story about consequences. Every decision made by William Afton and Henry Emily in those early days rippled forward through time, affecting not just their own families, but countless innocent lives. The animatronics they built to entertain became instruments of tragedy. The restaurants they opened to spread happiness became crime scenes. The technology they pioneered to push the boundaries of entertainment became a means of trapping human consciousness in mechanical bodies. And the partnership they formed, built on shared vision and mutual respect, eventually collapsed under the weight of unspeakable acts that neither man could have predicted when they first shook hands. To understand how it all went so catastrophically wrong, to trace the line from innocent beginning to nightmarish end, to see how each tragedy led inevitably to the next, we have to go back to the very beginning, to a time before Freddy Fazbear was a name anyone knew, before the first child went missing, before the first animatronic moved on its own. We have to go back to the Afton family in the 1960s and 70s, to a household that seemed normal on the surface, but harbored the seeds of something terrible. William Afton was, by most accounts, a brilliant man. He had a mind for engineering and robotics that was ahead of its time, a creative vision that saw potential where others saw only metal and wires, and an entrepreneurial drive that pushed him to turn his technical skills into a business. He was also a family man, or at least he appeared to be. He had a wife whose name has been lost to time and speculation, and three children who would each play crucial roles in the horror to come. There was Michael, the oldest, who inherited his father's determination, if not his genius. There was Elizabeth, the daughter, who loved the animatronics her father created with a passion that would prove fatal. And there was the youngest son, never named in the games, known to fans only as the crying child, a boy so traumatized by his father's creations that he could barely function around them. This family dynamic, already strained by William's obsessive work habits and the youngest son's debilitating fear, was about to fracture in a way that would change everything. But William wasn't working alone. His partner was Henry Emily, a man who matched William's technical brilliance, but brought something William lacked: a genuine warmth and love for children, a desire to create not just for the sake of creation, but to bring real joy into the world. Henry had a daughter named Charlotte, known as Charlie, who was everything to him. Where William seemed to view his children as extensions of himself or obstacles to his work, Henry cherished Charlie with the kind of pure parental love that should have been universal but wasn't. Together, William and Henry created something revolutionary. They opened Fredbear's Family Diner, a small restaurant featuring two animatronic characters, Fredbear and Spring Bonnie, that could perform for children during the day and be worn as suits by employees when needed. This dual functionality was achieved through spring lock mechanisms, an ingenious but dangerous design that allowed the animatronic parts to be compressed and locked back, creating space for a human to climb inside. It was innovative, it was profitable, it was also incredibly unsafe, but that wouldn't become apparent until later. The diner was a success, popular with families, beloved by children, and profitable enough to suggest expansion. This was the dream realized, two friends building something meaningful together, using their skills to create happiness. It should have been enough. For Henry, it was. For William, it was only the beginning. Somewhere in these early years, something shifted in William Afton. Whether it was a gradual descent or a sudden break, whether it was triggered by a specific event or emerged from something that had always been inside him, we may never know. What we do know is that William became fascinated with something beyond robotics and entertainment. He became obsessed with death, with life, with the boundary between them, and with the possibility of crossing it. This obsession would drive everything that followed, every murder, every experiment, every decision that led the story deeper into darkness. But before William's true nature revealed itself, before the murders began, there was a birthday party. It was 1983, and William's youngest son was about to turn another year older. The boy didn't want a party at Fredbear's, that much was clear. He was terrified of the animatronics, plagued by nightmares of them, reduced to tears by their presence. But the party was planned anyway, because that's what families did, and perhaps because William wanted to force his son to overcome his fear, to toughen up, to be less weak. Michael, the older brother, had his own issues with his younger sibling. Resentment, perhaps, or just the casual cruelty that teenagers sometimes inflict on those smaller than themselves. He and his friends wore masks of the animatronic characters, Freddy, Bonnie, Chica, and Foxy, and they tormented the crying child throughout the party, chasing him, scaring him, pushing his fear to its breaking point. And then they took it one step further. They picked up the crying, struggling boy and carried before the haunted pizzerias, before the missing children, before the decades of horror that would follow. There were two men with a dream, and one of them would become a monster. We're starting in the late 1960s, maybe early 1970s. The exact year isn't pinned down in the games, but this is when it all begins. This is when William Afton and Henry Emily first meet. Both men are engineers, both fascinated by the emerging field of animatronics. At this point in history, animatronics are still relatively new, mostly confined to theme parks and experimental entertainment venues. Disney's pioneering work with audio animatronics at Disneyland has proven the concept, shown that mechanical characters can captivate audiences, especially children. William and Henry see the potential immediately. They're not just colleagues, they become friends, partners, united by a shared vision of bringing these mechanical performers to smaller venues, to family restaurants where kids can eat pizza and watch robots sing. So they form a business partnership. Henry is the creative heart of the operation, the one who thinks about storytelling, about making children smile, about the magic of it all. William is the technical genius, the one who can solve the mechanical problems, who can make the servos work and the endoskeletons move with precision. Together, they're formidable, and together, they open Fredbear's Family Diner. It's a small place, modest, nothing like the sprawling locations that will come later. Just one dining room, a small kitchen, and a stage. But on that stage are two animatronic characters that Henry and William have built from scratch: Fredbear, a golden bear with a purple hat and bow tie, and Spring Bonnie, a golden rabbit. These aren't sophisticated machines by later standards. Their movements are simple, their routines basic. But to the kids who visit, they're magical, they're alive. The diner does well. Families come, children are enchanted, and Henry and William start to see real success. This is the foundation of everything, the moment when their partnership proves viable. Around the same time, William Afton gets married. We never learn his wife's name, not in any of the games, not in any of the books that tie directly to the game timeline. She's a ghost in the narrative, present only by implication. But she exists, and with her, William starts a family. His first child is a son, Michael. Then comes another son, the one the community calls the crying child, though some sources suggest his name might be Evan. We're not entirely certain. Finally, a daughter, Elizabeth, three children, a wife, a growing business. From the outside, William Afton probably looks successful, stable, like a man who has it all figured out. But something is already wrong. Henry, meanwhile, is pushing the technology forward. He develops something called spring-lock suits, and this is where we need to pause and explain what those are, because they become critically important to everything that follows. A spring-lock suit is a hybrid, a costume that can function in two modes. In animatronic mode, the suit is filled with mechanical parts, endoskeleton pieces, gears, and wires that allow it to move on its own, to perform like Fredbear and Spring Bonnie do on stage. But with the right procedure, you can wind back those internal mechanisms using a hand crank, compressing them against the inside walls of the suit and locking them in place with spring-loaded locks. Once that's done, a person can climb inside and wear the suit like a costume, performing as the character, interacting with guests up close. It's an elegant solution to a real problem. Animatronics are expensive. Building separate walk-around costumes is also expensive. Spring-lock suits let you do both with one piece of equipment. Henry patents the design. William helps refine it, improves the locking mechanisms, makes the suits more reliable, but they're dangerous, incredibly dangerous. If the spring locks fail while someone is inside, all those compressed mechanical parts snap back into place instantly with tremendous force. The endoskeleton pieces deploy into the space where the person's body is. The results would be catastrophic, fatal. So there are strict rules, safety protocols. Never wind the locks too tight. Never wear the suit in areas with high moisture, because moisture can trigger the spring locks. Never make sudden movements that might jostle the mechanisms. Fredbear and Spring Bonnie are converted into spring-lock suits. Sometimes they perform on stage in animatronic mode. Other times, employees wear them to greet children in the dining room. The business keeps growing. Henry is content with this, with the success of Fredbear's, with making children happy. But William wants more. This is where their visions start to diverge. Henry sees animatronics as entertainment, as vessels for joy and imagination. William sees them as something else. He becomes obsessed, not just with making them move, but with making them more. He starts thinking about artificial intelligence, about creating machines that can think, that can learn. He starts experimenting, pushing beyond what Henry considers safe or ethical, and he starts designing new animatronics in secret. These aren't for Fredbears. These are for a separate venture, something William is planning on his own. He calls them the Funtime Animatronics, and the star of the lineup is Circus Baby. She's more advanced than anything they've built before, more sophisticated in her movements, her voice, her interactive capabilities. William designs her with a specific aesthetic, a feminine animatronic with red pigtails, green eyes, a red dress. She's built to attract children, to entertain them, to draw them in. But there's something else built into Circus Baby, something Henry doesn't know about. A hidden function, a compartment in her torso that can open and close. William's intentions here are murky, debated by fans and theorists, but the capability is there, engineered into her from the start. He's also designing other fun times: Funtime Freddy, Funtime Foxy, Ballora, each one more technologically advanced than the characters at Fredbear's. These animatronics are sleek, shiny, built with a different purpose in mind. William is planning a new location, Circus Baby's Pizza World, where these characters will perform. At home, William's family is fracturing. Elizabeth, his daughter, becomes fascinated with her father's work. She visits his workshop, asks questions, wants to see the animatronics he's building. William encourages this. He shows her Circus Baby, tells her about the new restaurant. Elizabeth becomes obsessed with Baby, thinks she's the most beautiful thing she's ever seen. William seems to favor Elizabeth for this, for sharing his interest, for appreciating his creations. His younger son, the crying child, is the opposite. He's terrified of the animatronics. We see this in the minigames from Five Nights at Freddy's 4, the pixelated scenes that show his daily life. He cries constantly, has nightmares about the characters, is dragged to Fredbear's against his will. The reasons for his fear are never fully explained. Maybe he's seen something he shouldn't have. Maybe he's just a sensitive child, overwhelmed by the loud mechanical performers. Either way, his father has no patience for it. William is building a business empire around animatronics. His son's fear is an embarrassment, a weakness. Michael, the oldest, grows rebellious. He's a teenager, maybe, or close to it. His father is distant, always working, always focused on the business and the machines. His mother is a non-presence in the narrative, either absent or simply not intervening. So Michael acts out. He bullies his younger brother, the crying child, relentlessly. He wears a foxy mask, jumps out to scare him, locks him in rooms, torments him. He has friends who join in, other kids who wear masks of Freddy, Bonnie, and Chica. Together, they make the crying child's life miserable. This isn't just sibling rivalry. This is cruelty, sustained and deliberate, and it's happening because William Afton is failing as a father, too consumed by his work to notice or care what his children are doing to each other. Meanwhile, William's experiments are escalating. There's a concept in the FNAF universe called Remnant, and while it's not fully explained until later games, this is likely when William first encounters it. Remnant is a substance, a kind of liquid metal that's tied to human soul energy, to life force. It can be extracted, manipulated, injected into animatronics to give them a kind of artificial life, a haunted consciousness. The exact science is never clearly defined because it's not really science. It's supernatural horror dressed in technological language. But William becomes obsessed with it, with the idea of creating true artificial life, or perhaps even achieving immortality. Whether he's already killed to obtain Remnant at this point is unclear. Some timelines suggest early victims, experiments that predate the main tragedies. Others place his first murders later. The games are deliberately vague on this, but the obsession is there, growing, consuming him. The business, at least, continues to thrive. Fredbear's Family Diner is successful enough that Henry and William decide to expand. They open a sister location, a bigger venue with more animatronics. They call it Freddy Fazbear's Pizza. This new location features a full band of characters. Freddy Fazbear, the brown bear who becomes the face of the franchise. Bonnie, a blue rabbit with a red bow tie. Chica, a yellow chicken with a bib that says, "Let's eat." And Foxy, a red fox pirate with an eye patch and a hook. These characters are more polished than Fredbear and Spring Bonnie, more refined in their design and performance. They have a stage, a show, choreographed routines. Freddy Fazbear's Pizza is designed to be the next level, the proof that this business model can scale. Fredbear's remains open as the original location. the smaller diner with the spring-lock suits. Freddy's is the new flagship, the place that will carry the brand forward. Everything is expanding. The business, the technology, William's ambitions. From the outside, it looks like success. Two locations, multiple animatronic characters, families lining up to visit. But the cracks are already there. William's obsession is deepening. His family is falling apart. His experiments are moving into dangerous, unethical territory. And Henry, focused on the business and the creative work, doesn't see it yet. Elizabeth couldn't stay away. Despite every warning William gave her, despite being told again and again to keep her distance, she was drawn to Circus Baby like a moth to flame. The animatronic was designed to be irresistible to children. That was the whole point, and Elizabeth was no exception. She saw herself in that gleaming performer with the red pigtails and the bright green eyes. She wanted to be close to her. She wanted to make her father proud by interacting with his greatest creation. On the day Circus Baby's Pizza World was set to open, when the workshop was full of noise and preparation, Elizabeth saw her chance. She approached the animatronic alone. Circus Baby's programming kicked in, detecting a single child in the room, and the machine did exactly what it was built to do. A compartment in her chest opened, a mechanical claw extended, and in one swift motion, Elizabeth was pulled inside. The scooping mechanism, designed to grab and store a child for later extraction by William, malfunctioned. It didn't stop. Elizabeth Afton died inside the machine her father built, and Circus Baby's voice box captured her last sounds, her last breath, before the system reset and closed. William found her, or rather, he found what was left, hidden inside the animatronic as he'd poured his genius into. The pizza world never opened. He canceled the event, told investors there were technical malfunctions, and shut the entire operation down before a single customer walked through the door. Circus Baby's Entertainment and Rental, the sister company to Fazbear Entertainment, was closed to the public and relocated underground, literally underground. William moved the Funtime animatronics, Circus Baby included, into a massive subterranean facility beneath a new rental service. The official story was that the location wasn't ready. The real story was that his daughter's body was sealed inside a machine, and he needed time to figure out what that meant. He couldn't destroy Circus Baby, not when Elizabeth might still be in there somehow, not when the animatronic had become her tomb and possibly her vessel. So he hid them all: Circus Baby, Funtime Freddy, Funtime Foxy, Ballora, all of them locked away in an underground rental facility where they could be leased out for private parties, kept away from the public eye, kept under his control. But the damage to the family was already done. The crying child, the younger son who had always been fragile, who had always been afraid, saw things he shouldn't have seen. Whether he witnessed Elizabeth's death directly or stumbled upon the aftermath, whether William forced him to participate in experiments with the animatronics or he simply encountered them in the wrong place at the wrong time, the boy was traumatized. He began having breakdowns. He cried constantly. He couldn't be near the animatronics without shaking, without hyperventilating, without begging to go home. William's response wasn't comfort. It was frustration. He saw his son's fear as weakness, as something that needed to be corrected, possibly even as an opportunity. Some evidence suggests William used his younger son as a test subject, exposing him to the animatronics deliberately, studying his fear responses, trying to understand the connection between terror and memory and possession. Whether this was scientific curiosity or paternal cruelty or some twisted combination of both, the result was the same. The crying child lived in constant fear, and his older brother Michael noticed. Michael Afton was a teenager, angry and neglected and desperate for his father's attention. With Elizabeth gone, and his younger brother consuming what little emotional energy William had left, Michael lashed out. He bullied the crying child relentlessly. He wore a foxy mask and jumped out at him. He locked him in rooms with animatronic parts. He told him the robots were going to come to life and eat him. He gathered his friends, other teenagers in matching masks, Freddy, Bonnie, Chica, and together they tormented the boy day after day. The crying child's birthday was coming up in 1983, and William, in a rare moment of parental effort, decided to throw him a party at Fredbear's family diner. It was meant to be a reconciliation, a way to help his son overcome his fear by facing it in a controlled, celebratory environment. It backfired in the worst possible way. The party was a disaster from the start. The crying child didn't want to be there. He clung to the walls, tears streaming down his face, begging to leave. The other children ignored him or mocked him, and Michael, seeing his brother's terror, seeing an audience, seeing an opportunity to finally get a reaction, decided to take the prank to its limit. He and his friends grabbed the crying child. They lifted him up, kicking and screaming, and carried him toward the stage where Fredbear was performing. The animatronic's mouth was open mid-song, the massive spring-locked jaw designed to move smoothly for the entertainment of children. Michael shoved his brother's head inside. It was meant to be a scare, a cruel joke, a moment of humiliation that would end with laughter and maybe, in Michael's mind, toughen his brother up. But the spring locks inside Fredbear's jaw were old. They were under tension. And when the crying child's tears, his breath, the moisture from his screaming, made contact with the mechanisms, they snapped. The jaw clamped down. The sound was immediate and wet and final. The crying child's skull was crushed between animatronic teeth, and the diner erupted into chaos. Blood pooled on the stage. Children screamed. Parents rushed forward. Michael stood frozen, the foxy mask still on his face, staring at what he'd done. The crying child was rushed to the hospital, but the damage was catastrophic. His frontal lobe was destroyed. He was placed in a coma, hooked up to machines, his small body barely clinging to life. The doctors gave the family no hope. It was only a matter of time. But the crying child didn't die right away. He lingered, and in that liminal space between life and death, he dreamed, or maybe they weren't dreams. The crying child's hospital room became a prison of nightmares, and whether these were natural trauma responses or something William induced, whether his father was experimenting on him even as he lay dying, or the boy's mind was simply breaking under the weight of everything he'd seen, the result was the same. The crying child was haunted by twisted versions of the animatronics. Nightmare Freddy, Nightmare Bonnie, Nightmare Chica, Nightmare Foxy, all of them towering and grotesque, their bodies covered in teeth and claws, their eyes glowing in the dark. And at the center of it all was Nightmare Fredbear, the monster that had killed him, appearing again and again in hallways and bedrooms and shadows. Some believe these nightmares were real in the sense that William built machines to induce them, that he placed equipment in the crying child's room or in their home to project fear, to test the limits of consciousness and terror. Others think the boy's mind simply shattered, creating monsters from his trauma. Either way, the crying child suffered until the very end. He died days after the bite. His heart stopped, his breathing ceased, and the Afton family lost their second child in the span of months. The bite became known as the Bite of '83, a defining moment in Fazbear history, and the fallout was immediate. Fredbear's family diner was shut down permanently. The health violations alone were enough to bury it, but the public outcry, the media attention, the lawsuits, all of it made continuing impossible. Henry Emily, who had designed Fredbear and Spring Bonnie with William years earlier, was devastated. He'd already lost his daughter Charlotte to whatever tragedy had befallen her. The timeline here is murky, but the pain was real, and now his business, his dream, was collapsing under the weight of dead children and malfunctioning machines. Freddy Fazbear's Pizza remained open, the larger and more successful location, but Fredbear's was finished. The spring lock suits were decommissioned, deemed too dangerous for further use, though they were never destroyed. They were stored, locked away in back rooms, waiting. William Afton's response to his son's death was not grief in any recognizable form. It was rage. He blamed Henry for designing Fredbear. He blamed Michael for the prank. He blamed the animatronics themselves, the machines that kept taking his family from him. But more than anything, he blamed death. He became obsessed with the idea that mortality was a problem to be solved, that consciousness could be preserved, that his children didn't have to be gone if he could just find a way to bring them back, or trap them, or keep them tethered to something physical. He'd already seen hints of it with Elizabeth and Circus Baby. He'd already been experimenting with remnant, a term he used for the material substance of life and memory, something that could be extracted, heated, injected, manipulated. Now he doubled down. He began designing new animatronics, and these were different from anything that had come before. The nightmare animatronics, whether they were physical machines or psychological weapons or some combination of both, were born from William's unraveling mind. Some believe he built them to torment Michael, to punish his surviving son for what he'd done, to trap him in the same cycle of fear that had consumed the crying child. Others think they were experiments in fear itself, attempts to understand how terror affected the soul, how it could be harnessed or weaponized or used to keep someone conscious beyond death. The designs were grotesque, exaggerated versions of the characters children loved, turned into monsters with rows of teeth and claws and exposed endoskeletons. They were nightmares made metal, and whether Michael ever encountered them physically or only in his own guilt-ridden mind, they became part of the Afton legacy, another layer of horror in a family that was drowning in it. Henry Emily tried to distance himself. He'd been William's partner for years, the creative heart to William's technical genius, but the tragedies were too much. His daughter was gone. The crying child was dead. Fredbear's was closed. He couldn't reconcile the dream of bringing joy to children with the reality of what their creations had become. But he didn't leave entirely. The business partnership lingered, tangled up in contracts and shared assets, and the simple fact that Freddy Fazbear's Pizza was still operating and still needed both of their expertise. Henry pulled back, spent more time away from the workshops, tried to process his grief in private. William, meanwhile, sank deeper. He stopped pretending to be a family man. He stopped pretending to care about safety or ethics or anything beyond his own obsessions. His grief had curdled into something dangerous, and his experiments were about to take a darker turn, because William Afton had learned something from his children's deaths. He'd learned that animatronics could hold more than programming. They could hold souls, and if that was true, if consciousness could be trapped inside metal and wires, then death wasn't the end. It was just a transition. And if he could control that transition, if he could master it, then he could have everything he wanted: immortality, power, his family back, in whatever form they took. All he needed was more test subjects, more remnant, more souls. The missing children incident was still to come, but the foundation was already laid. William Afton had lost everything, and in losing it, he'd become something far worse than a grieving father. He'd become a monster with a plan. By the early 1980s, William Afton and Henry Emily are ready to turn their shared vision into something real. They open Fredbear's Family Diner, a modest restaurant that's part pizzeria, part entertainment venue, and entirely built around two animatronic characters: Fredbear, a golden bear with a top hat and bow tie, and Spring Bonnie, a yellow rabbit with a permanent grin. The diner is small at first, nothing like the sprawling franchise it will eventually spawn, but it's charming. Kids love it, parents tolerate it, and for Henry Emily, It's the culmination of years of engineering work and creative passion. Henry is the heart of the operation. He designs the animatronics, programs their movements, and writes their routines. He's meticulous, obsessive even, but in a way that produces results. Fredbear and Spring Bonnie aren't just machines that wave and sing, they feel alive, or at least alive enough to captivate a room full of children. Henry also handles the technical side of the business, the maintenance schedules, the safety protocols, the constant tinkering required to keep two massive mechanical performers running 6 days a week. William Afton, meanwhile, takes on the business operations. He manages the finances, negotiates supplier contracts, handles staffing, and deals with the less glamorous realities of running a restaurant. On paper, it's a perfect partnership. Henry builds the magic. William makes sure the lights stay on. But the partnership isn't as balanced as it looks. William is competent, maybe even talented in his own right, but he's not the visionary. He's not the one parents point to when they talk about how impressive the animatronics are. He's not the one kids ask to meet. That's Henry. And William notices. He notices the way Henry's name gets mentioned first when people talk about the diner. He notices the pride in Henry's voice when he explains how the spring lock mechanisms work, the way his face lights up when a child laughs at one of Fredbear's pre-programmed jokes. William has a family, a wife, and 3 children, but Henry's family seems happier, more stable. Henry's daughter Charlotte, who everyone calls Charlie, visits the diner constantly, and she's bright and curious and adored by her father. William's own children are complicated. His oldest son, Michael, is angry and cruel. His daughter, Elizabeth, is needy and obsessed with the animatronics in a way that unnerves him. And his youngest, a boy the family will later come to call the crying child, is terrified of everything. William doesn't admit it out loud, but he resents Henry, not just for the recognition, but for making it all look so easy. The diner's signature innovation is the spring lock suit, a piece of technology that Henry designs and William helps refine. The concept is clever, almost too clever. The suits, Fredbear and Spring Bonnie, can function in 2 modes. In animatronic mode, they're powered performers, moving on their own with endoskeletons, metal frames, and machinery packed inside the costume shell. But with the flip of a series of locks, the endoskeleton can be compressed and locked into place along the inside walls of the suite, creating just enough space for a human employee to climb inside and wear it like a costume. This means the diner doesn't need separate mascot costumes. 1 suit, 2 functions. It saves money and storage space. It's brilliant. It's also incredibly dangerous. The spring locks are tensioned metal components, wound tight and held in place by a series of small fasteners. If the locks get wet, or jostle too hard, or if the person inside the suit breathes wrong and shifts their weight in a way that nudges a lock loose, the entire endoskeleton can snap back into its default position in a fraction of a second. That means metal rods, gears, and crossbeams slamming into the body of whoever is inside. The training manual for employees is very clear about this. Don't wear the suit in humid conditions. Don't make sudden movements. If you hear a lock click out of place, freeze and call for help. The diner treats the spring lock suits with caution, at least at first, but accidents are inevitable. Employees get pinched. A spring lock fails during a birthday party, and an entertainer has to be rushed out of the suit before it fully collapses. The diner avoids a catastrophic incident in these early years, but the risk is always there, hanging over every shift where someone climbs into Fredbear or Spring Bonnie. Henry's daughter, Charlotte Emily, is a fixture at Fredbear's. She's there after school, on weekends, during the summer. Henry brings her because he works long hours and because she genuinely loves the place. She's not like the other kids who visit for birthday parties and leave after an hour. She knows the layout, knows the employees, knows which animatronic routines are new and which have been running since opening day. Henry, ever the protective father, designs a security measure specifically with her in mind. He builds the puppet, a slender animatronic with a white face, rosy cheeks, and tear like streaks running down from its eyes. The puppet lives inside a large music box in the prize corner, and its primary function is to monitor the diner, and more specifically, to keep track of Charlotte. It's programmed with a basic facial recognition system, rudimentary by any standard but functional enough to identify her. If Charlotte wanders too far, if she leaves the building, the puppet is supposed to alert staff. It's a safety net, a way for Henry to work and still know his daughter is accounted for. But safety nets fail. One evening in 1983, Charlotte is locked outside the diner. The details of how it happens are murky, whether she wandered out on her own or was drawn outside by something, but she ends up in the alley behind the building, alone. William Afton is there. He sees her, and in a moment that will define everything that follows, he makes a choice. He doesn't call for Henry. He doesn't bring her back inside. He kills her. It's not an accident, not a moment of rage. It's calculated. He lures her far enough from the door that no one inside will hear, and he murders Henry Emily's daughter in the cold air behind the diner that Henry built. Charlotte's body is left in the alley, slumped against the wall near a stack of trash bins. Inside, the puppet's music box winds down. The mechanism that keeps it contained relies on the music playing, a constant loop that holds it in place. When the music stops, the puppet is free to move. It exits the prize corner, navigates through the diner, and finds the back exit. It moves into the alley. It finds Charlotte. Rain begins to fall, light at first, then heavier. The puppet reaches her body and stops. Its limbs lock. The rain soaks into its fabric exterior, seeps into its joints. The animatronic collapses beside her, motionless. But something happens in that alley. Something the original designers, Henry included, never planned for and couldn't have predicted. Charlotte's spirit doesn't leave. It latches onto the puppet, the animatronic her father built to protect her, the one that arrived too late. She possesses it. The puppet rises again, not as a machine following programmed routines, but as something else. It picks up Charlotte's body, cradling it with a tenderness no animatronic should be capable of, and brings it back inside. This is the first known supernatural event tied to Freddy Fazbear's Pizza, the first time a child's death results in possession, the first crack in the wall between the living and the dead. The puppet, now inhabited by Charlotte's spirit, changes. It becomes protective of the children who visit the diner, watchful in a way that goes beyond programming. It seems to sense danger before it arrives, to hover near kids who wander too close to dark corners or empty halls. Employees notice it moving when it shouldn't, appearing in places it wasn't left. No one understands why. No one connects it to Charlotte yet. Her death is treated as a tragedy, a horrible accident, maybe a random act of violence. William Afton says nothing. He returns to his routines, his family, his partnership with Henry, and he carries the secret with him. At home, William's youngest son is unraveling. The boy, who will later be referred to in some interpretations as Evan Afton, is terrified of the animatronics. He's seen them up close too many times, watched their jerky movements and unblinking eyes, heard the mechanical whir of their servos. To him, they're not fun, they're monsters. Michael Afton, the older brother, wasn't content to let his little brother's fear sit quietly in the background. He had friends, the kind of teenagers who thought cruelty was a sport, and together they made it their mission to push the crying child as close to the animatronics as possible. They'd corner him near Fredbear, hold him up to the stage where Spring Bonnie stood frozen mid-performance, force him to look into those dead glass eyes. The kid would scream, thrash, beg them to stop. They never did. This wasn't just sibling rivalry. This was systematic, repeated, deliberate. Michael wore a foxy mask during these episodes, a cruel touch that blurred the line between brother and monster. His friends had masks too: Freddy, Bonnie, Chica, turning themselves into walking nightmares. Every time they cornered the crying child, every time they shoved him toward those metal jaws, they reinforced the same message: you are small, you are helpless, and no one is coming to save you. William Afton watched all of this. He knew fathers are supposed to intervene, to protect, to draw a line. William did none of those things. Instead, he observed. He took notes. Because to William, his son's terror wasn't a problem to solve, it was data to collect. He was deep into his experiments by this point, obsessed with something he called remnant, a substance he believed could preserve life, or at least consciousness, beyond death. Remnant required emotion, specifically fear and agony, to manifest. It required a soul under extreme duress. And here was his youngest son, a perfect test subject, experiencing that duress on a daily basis. William didn't stop Michael's bullying because it served his purposes. He may have even encouraged it, subtly, the way a scientist adjusts variables in a controlled experiment. He wanted to see how the animatronics responded to prolonged exposure to a terrified child. He wanted to see if fear could leave an imprint, a residue, something he could harvest later. The crying child wasn't just William's son, he was raw material. Meanwhile, life at Fredbear's continued. Children still came for birthday parties. Parents still dropped their kids off, trusting the smiling staff and the cheerful yellow bear on stage. Fredbear and Spring Bonnie performed their routines, clapping their oversized paws, singing their looping songs, while kids sat cross-legged on the floor and clapped along. None of them understood what they were looking at. None of them knew that the suits on stage were Springlock hybrids, machines that could switch between animatronic mode and wearable costume with the pull of a few latches. None of them knew how dangerous that made them. Springlocks were tensioned metal coils that held the animatronic endoskeleton, the inner skeleton, in a compressed position so a human could climb inside. If the locks failed, if they got wet or jostled or worn down, they would snap back into place with enough force to crush bone. The employees knew, William knew, but the children sitting in those party rooms, faces painted, birthday hats crooked on their heads, they had no idea they were inches away from something that could kill them in seconds. The crying child's birthday arrived. His family threw him a party at Fredbear's because of course they did. It was the family business. It was the place his father built. It didn't matter that the child was terrified of the location, that he associated it with trauma and dread. The party went ahead. Balloons, cake, the usual decorations. The crying child spent the event in a state of near paralysis, eyes darting toward the stage, toward the animatronics waiting for the next moment of horror. Michael and his friends saw an opportunity. They saw a room full of witnesses, a crowd that could all, and there were 4 of them. They lifted him off the ground, carried him toward the stage, toward Fredbear. The other kids at the party laughed. They thought it was part of the show. The crying child screamed, begged them to stop, but his voice disappeared into the noise of the room. Michael and his friends hoisted him higher, angling him toward Fredbear's face, toward that wide, hinged mouth lined with blunt metal teeth, and then they shoved him inside. The spring locks failed immediately. Moisture, maybe from the crying child's tears, maybe from the humidity of his breath, maybe from the sweat of panic. Or maybe they were already worn, already on the edge of failure, and this was just the final trigger. Either way, the locks snapped. The animatronic's jaw, no longer held open by the tensioned coils, clamped shut with hydraulic force. The sound was wet and sharp at the same time, a crunch that cut through the music and the chatter. The crying child's head was caught between the upper and lower jaw. His skull didn't stand a chance. The room went silent. Then the screaming started. Blood spread across Fredbear's yellow fur. pooling in the seams of the costume dripping onto the stage. Michael staggered backward, mask still on, frozen. His friends ran. Parents rushed forward, but there was nothing to do. The damage was immediate and catastrophic. The crying child was still breathing, barely, but his brain was destroyed. He was rushed to a hospital, placed on life support, but everyone knew he wasn't coming back. He lingered for days, hooked up to machines, while his father sat beside him and whispered things no one else could hear. Apologies, maybe, or promises, or calculations. The diner's management moved fast to control the narrative. They called it an accident, a tragic malfunction, a 1 in a million mechanical failure. They offered the family a settlement, a quiet payout in exchange for silence. William took the money. He didn't make a fuss. He didn't demand accountability. Publicly, he played the grieving father. Privately, he was already planning his next move. But rumors spread anyway. Kids who were at the party told their parents what they saw. Staff members whispered to each other in the kitchen, in the storage rooms, about the blood that wouldn't wash out of Fredbear's suit, about the way the animatronic seemed heavier afterward, like something was still inside. Business at Fredbear's dropped off sharply. Parents stopped booking parties, the phone stopped ringing. The diner, once packed on weekends, sat half empty, and the puppet was watching. It had been active since Charlotte's death, bound to her spirit, driven by a need to protect the innocent. It saw what William did. It saw the crying child die. It saw William's indifference. The puppet began to manifest more openly now, moving when it shouldn't, appearing in places it hadn't been left, staring at employees with those unblinking painted eyes. Staff started quitting. They said the building felt wrong, that something was watching them, that the music box in the back room would wind down faster than it should. The puppet didn't attack, not yet, but its presence was a constant weight, a reminder that something unnatural had taken root in Fredbear's family diner. The diner closed within months. The scandal, the rumors, the financial collapse, it was all too much. William didn't fight it. He had what he needed. He salvaged the animatronics, Fredbear and Spring Bonnie, stripped them down, stored them away. He took the Springlock technology, the designs, the branding, and rolled it all into his next project, Fazbear Entertainment. A bigger venture, a broader vision, a chance to refine his experiments on a larger scale. Fredbear's family diner was gone, but its legacy, the death, the fear, the remnant that would carry forward. William Afton was just getting started. After Fredbear's family diner proved successful, the natural next step was expansion. Around 1983, though some sources place it as late as 1985, Henry Emily and William Afton opened a much larger establishment, Freddy Fazbear's Pizza. This wasn't just a second location. This was the flagship, the main event. Where Fredbear's had been cozy and intimate, Freddy's was designed to be a full-scale entertainment complex, a place where entire birthday parties could unfold under one roof, where the animatronics weren't just a novelty, but the central attraction. The restaurant featured a brand new cast of characters, each with their own personality, their own role in the show. Freddy Fazbear himself, the lead singer, a brown bear with a top hat and bow tie, friendly and dependable. Bonnie, the purple rabbit with a guitar, energetic and fun. Chica, the yellow chicken with a bib that read, "Let's eat," always accompanied by her cupcake. And Foxy, the pirate fox, tucked away in his own pirate cove, a performer who'd rush out for special shows. These weren't the Springlock suits. These were purely animatronic, safer, more reliable, built by Henry with all the lessons he'd learned from the earlier designs. Henry handled the creative side, the engineering, the soul of the place. William, as always, managed the business operations, the logistics, the money. On paper, it was the same partnership that had worked at Fredbear's. But something had shifted in William. The loss of his youngest son in the bite of 83 had hollowed him out, left him obsessed with questions that didn't have answers. Death, consciousness, whether something could survive the end of the body. He'd watched his son die, and in the aftermath, he'd become fixated on a concept he called remnant, a substance he believed could anchor a soul to the physical world. It wasn't science, not exactly. It was something darker. And it made him look at Henry's success, Henry's happy family, Henry's brilliant creations, with a bitterness that curdled into jealousy. Henry had a daughter, Charlotte Emily, though everyone called her Charlie. She was young, curious, always hanging around the pizzeria while her father worked. Henry adored her. And because he adored her, he built something specifically to keep her safe: the puppet. It was an animatronic, yes, but a strange one, tall and slender, with a white face painted like a theatrical mask, black tears streaking down its cheeks. It was kept in a large music box, and its primary function was security. Specifically, it was programmed to respond to a special bracelet Charlie wore. If she wandered too far, if she left the building, if she was in distress, the puppet would activate. It was Henry's way of watching over her, even when he couldn't be in the same room. A mechanical guardian. It seemed like a good idea at the time, but William was watching, and William was planning. The exact timeline gets murky here, but what's clear is that William Afton, now deep in his obsession with Remnant and consumed by jealousy toward Henry, began to see the children at Freddy's not as guests, not as innocent kids enjoying pizza and animatronics, but as opportunities. Test subjects. He believed that if he could extract remnant from a human being, particularly a child, he could prove his theories. He could control life and death. So he started plotting. He knew the layout of the restaurant. He knew the blind spots. He knew how to manipulate trust. And one day, he put on a costume. Not a springlock suit this time, but something simpler. A mascot outfit. Some accounts say it was a golden Bonnie suit, a spare from the early days. Others suggest it was Fredbear himself. Either way, it was enough to make him look safe, look official, look like part of the show. Kids trusted mascots. That was the whole point. And so William Afton lured 5 children away from the main party rooms. Their names were Gabriel, Jeremy, Susie, Fritz, and Cassidy. 5 kids who thought they were being taken somewhere special, maybe a back room for a private show, maybe a prize. We don't know exactly what he told them, but we know what happened next. He murdered them, one by one, quickly, quietly, in a back room where no one would hear. And then, because he needed to hide the bodies, because he couldn't risk being caught, he stuffed them inside the animatronics. Gabriel went into Freddy Fazbear, Jeremy into Bonnie, Susie into Chica, Fritz into Foxy, and Cassidy, the 5th child, was placed inside a spare suit that had been sitting in the back, a golden version of Freddy that employees sometimes called Golden Freddy. It wasn't part of the main show anymore, just a relic, a backup, but it would do. This became known as the Missing Children Incident. 5 kids vanished from Freddy Fazbear's Pizza in broad daylight, and no one saw a thing. Parents panicked. Police investigated. But there were no witnesses, no clear evidence, no bodies. Just 5 empty chairs at 5 birthday parties and a community in shock. Fazbear Entertainment, the parent company that now oversaw the franchise, moved quickly to control the narrative. They cooperated with police, sure, but they also worked hard to avoid a scandal. They couldn't afford to shut down. They couldn't afford the liability, so they downplayed it, suggested the kids might have wandered off, implied parental negligence, anything to keep the focus away from the restaurant itself. But William had made a miscalculation, or maybe he'd made exactly the calculation he wanted, because the children didn't just die. They stayed. Charlotte Emily, Henry's daughter, had already been killed by this point. William had murdered her too, outside the pizzeria, on a rainy night when the other kids had locked her out as a cruel prank. The puppet, her mechanical guardian, had been trapped inside its music box, unable to reach her in time. By the time it broke free and found her, she was lying in the alley cold and still, and something happened, something no one, not even William, fully understood. Charlie's soul, her consciousness, her remnant, fused with the puppet. The animatronic became her new body. She was no longer Charlotte Emily. She was the puppet, and she was aware. The puppet found the other children. The five William had hidden inside the animatronics. Their bodies were decaying, crammed into metal shells, but their souls were still there, confused, terrified, trapped. So the puppet did something. It gave them life. Not true life, not the kind they'd had before, but a kind of half existence, a possession. It guided their remnant into the machines, bound them to the endoskeletons, the wiring, the servos. Gabriel became Freddy. Jeremy became Bonnie. Susie became Chica. Fritz became Foxy. Cassidy became Golden Freddy. They weren't animatronics anymore. They were haunted, and they were angry. At first, the changes were subtle. The animatronics would twitch during the day, their eyes tracking movement when they shouldn't have been active. They'd shift position overnight, even though they were supposed to be powered down. Employees started noticing things. Freddy's jaw would hang open in a way that didn't match his programming. Foxy would peek out from Pirate Cove when no one had activated him. Bonnie would be found standing in places he hadn't been left. Chica's eyes would stare directly at staff members, unblinking. It was unsettling. But Fazbear Entertainment chalked it up to glitches, mechanical quirks, the kind of thing that happened with complex animatronics. They sent technicians, they ran diagnostics, everything checked out on paper. Then the smell started, a foul, creeping odor that seemed to come from the animatronics themselves. It was worst around Freddy, Bonnie, Chica, and Foxy, the main four. Parents complained. Health inspectors were called, and when they looked closer, they found blood and mucus leaking from the seams of the costumes, from the joints, or from the eyes. The official explanation was that the animatronics had malfunctioned, that hydraulic fluid or lubricant had mixed with dust and grime. But anyone who got close knew better. It smelled like rot, like death, like something organic was decaying inside those metal frames. The animatronics' behavior grew more aggressive. At night, when the pizzeria was closed and only a security guard remained, they would move, not randomly, purposefully. They'd leave the stage and wander the halls, peer into the security office. They were hunting. Specifically, they were hunting adults. The children inside them, the murdered victims, couldn't distinguish between innocent staff and the man who'd killed them. All they knew was rage. All they remembered was a man in a costume, someone who'd looked safe, who'd smiled and led them to their deaths. So they attacked anyone who resembled that. Anyone in a uniform, anyone working the night shift. The security guards started quitting. Some lasted a week, some lasted a night. The turnover was constant. Fazbear Entertainment kept hiring, kept offering minimum wage and a quiet workspace, kept insisting the animatronics were safe, just a little glitchy. But the guards knew. They could see it in Freddy's eyes when he appeared in the doorway. They could hear it in the way Foxy sprinted down the hall. These machines wanted them dead. Golden Freddy was different. Cassidy, the child possessing that suit, didn't move like the others. Golden Freddy would appear and disappear, flickering in and out of existence, manifesting as a slumped, lifeless figure in the office or the hallway. It wasn't bound by the same rules. It was more ghost than animatronic, and it was the most dangerous of all. Through all of this, the puppet watched. Charlotte, still bound to that tall, eerie figure, had become something like a guardian. She didn't attack the guards, not usually. She was different. She remembered more. She understood more. and she guided the others, kept them focused, kept them tethered to the world of the living. She was the one who'd given them this half life, and in a way, she was responsible for them. The music box that had once kept her contained now served as a kind of anchor. If it wound down, if the music stopped, the puppet would emerge. Not to kill necessarily, but to remind everyone that she was there, watching, waiting. Fazbear Entertainment, meanwhile, doubled down on the cover up. They couldn't let the truth come out. They couldn't admit that 5 children had been murdered on their premises, that their animatronics were possessed, that their flagship restaurant was a tomb. So they kept the doors open. They kept serving pizza. They kept smiling for the cameras. And they kept hiring new security guards, one after another, to face the night shift alone. So William Afton, the man behind the murders, is still at large. But he's not stupid. He knows the heat's on him, and he needs a way to move around without raising suspicion. Enter the Spring Bonnie suit. This was one of the original Springlock animatronics, designed to be worn by a performer. It's bulky, dangerous, and frankly, a ticking time bomb, but it's also the perfect disguise. William uses it to slip in and out of the restaurant, blending in with the animatronics. No one questions a yellow rabbit wandering around. It's a bold move, but it works, for now. Meanwhile, the employees at Freddy Fazbear's Pizza are starting to notice something's off. The animatronics aren't acting right. They're staring at people, not just a casual glance, but a full on, unnerving stare that lingers too long. And then there's the parts and service room. Employees report seeing the animatronics wandering in there on their own, even though they're not programmed to do that. It's creepy, sure, but it's also a red flag. Something's wrong with these machines, and no one can figure out what. Then, in 1983, something happens that shifts the focus away from Freddy's for a moment. The bite of 83. This occurs at Fredbear's Family Diner, the sister location to Freddy Fazbear's Pizza. It's unrelated to the murders, but it's devastating. A child is bitten by one of the animatronics, specifically Fredbear, and the incident is so severe that it leads to the closure of Fredbear's Family Diner. The details are murky, but it's clear that animatronic safety is now a major concern. Parents are terrified, and the scrutiny on Fazbear Entertainment intensifies. Fazbear Entertainment tries to do damage control. They rebrand, downplay the rumors, and insist that their animatronics are safe, but it's not enough. The trust is broken. Customers are staying away, and the rumors about the murders and the strange behavior of the animatronics are only getting louder. Things take an even darker turn when night guards start reporting hallucinations. Specifically, sightings of Golden Freddy. This animatronic isn't supposed to exist, at least not in the way it's appearing. Guards see it in the office one moment, and then it's gone the next. It's not just a malfunction, it's something else, something supernatural. And then there's the puppet. This animatronic starts showing up at night, moving on its own, despite having no programming to do so. Its behavior is erratic, almost purposeful. It's as if it's searching for something, or someone. William Afton, meanwhile, is still lurking in the shadows. But he's not just hiding, he's experimenting. He believes he's discovered something called remnant, a substance tied to the spirits of the dead. He thinks he can harness it, control it. So he dismantles the animatronics, trying to extract this remnant. But it's a disaster. Not only does he fail, but he also damages the animatronics beyond repair. The restaurant's reputation takes another hit, and the animatronics' strange behavior only gets worse. But William's experiments come with a price. The spirits of the children he murdered aren't just trapped in the animatronics, they're aware, and they're angry. They confront him in the back room, cornering him. Panicked, William does the only thing he can think of. He climbs into the Spring Bonnie suit. It's a fatal mistake. The spring lock mechanisms in the suit are delicate, and they're triggered by moisture, like, say, the sweat from a panicked man. The locks fail, and the suit collapses inward, crushing William. He dies instantly, but his story doesn't end there. His spirit becomes trapped in the suit, transforming it into something new, Springtrap. With William gone, the restaurant spirals, health violations pile up, lawsuits mount, and the unresolved murders continue to haunt Fazbear Entertainment. By late 1985 or early 1986, Freddy Fazbear's Pizza closes its doors for good. The animatronics are left behind, abandoned in the decaying building. Their spirits, now unrestrained, roam freely. Fazbear Entertainment tries to distance itself from the tragedy, but the damage is done. The legacy of Freddy Fazbear's Pizza is forever tainted by the horrors that unfolded within its walls. But this isn't the end. Far from it. The animatronics, the spirits, and the shadow of William Afton will continue to shape the story of Fazbear Entertainment for years to come. And as the company tries to move forward, the past refuses to stay buried. The year is 1987, and Freddy Fazbear's Pizza is back. But this isn't the same place from 1983. This is a reboot, a fresh start, and it's supposed to be safer. The company has introduced the toy animatronics, a sleek, high-tech upgrade to the original cast. Toy Freddy, Toy Bonnie, Toy Chica, Mangle, and Balloon Boy are designed to be friendlier, more approachable, and equipped with advanced safety features like facial recognition. The idea is simple. They'll recognize potential threats and avoid harming kids. But the original animatronics, Freddy, Bonnie, Chica, and Foxy, aren't gone. They're kept in the back room, dismantled and repurposed for parts. They're still active, though, and their spirits are restless. This is the stage for one of the most infamous events in Fazbear history, the Bite of '87. But before we get to that, let's set the scene. The reopening of Freddy Fazbear's Pizza in 1987 wasn't just about a new look. It was a desperate attempt to distance the brand from the tragedies of the past. The missing children incident had left a stain on the company's reputation, and the toy animatronics were supposed to be the solution. Their shiny plastic exteriors and cheerful designs were meant to reassure parents. But behind the scenes, something darker was brewing. William Afton, the man behind the missing children incident, hadn't been caught. He'd slipped through the cracks, avoiding any real consequences, and now he was back. Afton returned to the new location under the alias Dave Miller, posing as a night guard. This was a calculated move. He needed access to the animatronics, and he needed to continue his experiments. Afton's obsession with Remnant, the supernatural essence tied to the souls of the dead, drove him. He believed he could harness it, control it, and use it to achieve immortality. And to do that, he needed more victims. So Afton got to work. Using his position as a night guard, he lured a second group of children to the pizzeria. The details are murky, but the outcome is clear. These kids were killed, and their bodies were hidden within the premises. This wasn't random. Afton was methodical, targeting specific children and ensuring their souls would be trapped in the animatronics. But he didn't stop there. He tampered with the toy animatronics' facial recognition systems, causing them to malfunction. The toy animatronics were designed to identify threats, but with Afton's interference, their programming went haywire. They began to mistake adults for threats, viewing them as potential dangers to the children they were meant to protect. This wasn't an accident. Afton wanted to see how the animatronics would react when their systems were compromised. He was studying them, observing their behavior, and collecting data for his experiments. Meanwhile, the spirits of the new victims began to take hold. Possessing the toy animatronics, they turned them hostile. These weren't just machines anymore. They were vessels for the anger and pain of the children Afton had killed. And they weren't just hostile toward Afton, they were hostile toward all adults. This is where Jeremy Fitzgerald enters the story. Jeremy was hired as the new night guard after Afton's brief stint. He was just a regular guy, trying to do his job. But he quickly realized something was off. The animatronics were aggressive, moving around at night and staring at him with an intensity that didn't feel right. Phone Guy, now a company employee, left instructional messages for Jeremy, hinting at the animatronic's odd behavior. He tried to reassure Jeremy, explaining that the animatronics were just following their programming. But Jeremy knew better. The puppet, still active from the previous location, returned as well. It had always been a protector of sorts, guiding the spirits of the children and trying to keep them safe. Now it was attempting to do the same for the new victims. But even the puppet couldn't stop the chaos Afton had unleashed. The toy animatronics' malfunctioning facial recognition systems caused them to attack staff at night. Mangle, in particular, became especially aggressive. Originally designed as a take-apart, put-together attraction, Mangle was left in a state of disrepair, constantly dismantled and reassembled by kids. This made it unpredictable. It moved erratically, crawling on ceilings and walls, and its attacks were relentless. Reports of the animatronics moving at night and staring at adults began to spread among the daytime staff. It was unsettling, to say the least. The animatronics weren't supposed to act like this. They were supposed to be safe, but something had gone wrong, and no one could figure out why. Afton, of course, knew exactly what was happening. He was observing the chaos he'd orchestrated, studying the possessed animatronics' behavior for his experiments. This was all part of his plan. He wanted to see how far he could push the animatronics, how much control he could exert over them, and how much pain he could inflict. But Afton wasn't the only one watching. The spirits of the children were watching too. They were trapped, angry, and desperate for justice, and they weren't going to let Afton get away with what he'd done. This was the state of Freddy Fazbear's Pizza in 1987, a shiny new facade hiding a dark and twisted reality. The toy animatronics, designed to be safer, were now more dangerous than ever, and the original animatronics, relegated to the back room, were still active, their spirits restless and vengeful. The stage was set for disaster, and it was only a matter of time before everything came crashing down. But we're not there yet. This is just the beginning of the bite of 87. The next part of the story is where things get even more intense. So let's keep going. So here's where things take a sharp turn. The original animatronics, still haunted by the spirits of the first set of victims, were becoming increasingly aggressive. Their movements were erratic, their behavior unpredictable, but it wasn't just them. The toy animatronics, designed to be safer and friendlier, were also showing signs of malfunction. The company had assured everyone that these new models were state-of-the-art, equipped with facial recognition and advanced safety protocols. But something was off, and on one fateful day in 1987, that off turned into a catastrophe. It happened during a birthday party. The location was packed with kids and parents, the kind of scene Fazbear Entertainment loved to promote. But amidst the laughter and chaos, one of the toy animatronics snapped. Exactly which one did it is still debated. Some say Mongol, others point to Toy Chica, or even Freddy, but the result was the same. A daytime employee, widely believed to be Jeremy Fitzgerald, was attacked. The animatronic lunged at him, clamping down on his head with a force that defied its programming. It wasn't just a bite. It was a brutal, savage act that left Jeremy with severe damage to his frontal lobe. He survived, but the incident was horrifying. And it wasn't just the injury that shook everyone. It was the fact that it happened in broad daylight, in front of dozens of witnesses. The fallout was immediate. Patrons screamed, parents grabbed their kids, and chaos erupted. The media pounced on the story, turning the bite of 87 into a national scandal. Headlines screamed about the dangers of animatronics, questioning how something like this could happen in a place designed for children. Fazbear Entertainment tried to do damage control, but it was too late. The public outcry was deafening. Within days, the 1987 location was shut down. The company cited technical malfunctions and tampering as the cause, but no one bought it. The trust was gone. The toy animatronics, once hailed as the future of entertainment, were scrapped, their parts were sold off or repurposed, but their spirits, trapped and restless, remained. The original animatronics, meanwhile, were moved into storage. Still possessed, still unstable, they were tucked away in the shadows, waiting for their next chance to act. And through it all, William Afton, the man behind the murders, vanished again. He left no trace, no evidence of his involvement. The company didn't even mention him. To the public, he was a ghost, a man who had disappeared into the ether. The puppet, however, wasn't done. Still lingering in the background, it continued its silent vigil, seeking justice for the murdered children. Its presence was a reminder that the story wasn't over, that the horrors of Freddy Fazbear's Pizza were far from resolved. As for Jeremy Fitzgerald, his fate remains unclear. Some say he was fired, others believe he resigned. Either way, he vanished from the scene, leaving behind only questions. The bite of 87 became a defining moment in Fazbear Entertainment's history. It wasn't just the injury or the shutdown, it was the way the incident exposed the cracks in the company's facade. The public had seen the truth, and it wasn't pretty. The closure of the 1987 location marked the end of the toy era, a period of innovation that had turned into a nightmare. But Fazbear Entertainment wasn't done. They were already planning their next move, a smaller scale reopening that they hoped would restore their reputation. It was a long shot, but they had no choice. The bite had changed everything, and there was no going back. This incident wasn't just a turning point, it was a warning. The animatronics weren't just machines, they were vessels for something darker, something that couldn't be controlled. And as Fazbear Entertainment picked up the pieces, that darkness lingered, waiting for its next opportunity to strike. The bite of 87 was a tragedy, but it was also a harbinger. The worst was yet to come. The year is 1993, and Freddy Fazbear's Pizza is back, sort of. After the catastrophic events of the original location, the franchise makes a smaller, scaled-down return. This isn't the bustling family pizzeria of the 1980s. It's a shadow of its former self, operating on a shoestring budget and haunted quite literally by its past. The animatronics from the old location, Freddy Fazbear, Bonnie the Bunny, Chica the Chicken, and Foxy the Pirate Fox, are reused here, but they're not the shiny, friendly mascots they once were. They're withered, damaged, and unbeknownst to most, inhabited by the restless spirits of children murdered nearly a decade earlier. This revival is a desperate attempt to keep the Fazbear brand alive, but it's built on a foundation of lies and secrets. The animatronics aren't just malfunctioning, as management claims. They're haunted, driven by the vengeful souls of the children killed by William Afton in the 1985 missing children incident. These spirits are trapped, confused, and angry, and their presence turns the animatronics into something far more dangerous than anyone realizes. The company, however, isn't interested in addressing the truth. They're focused on one thing: keeping the doors open, and that means cutting corners wherever they can. The facility itself is a mess. The animatronics are poorly maintained, their endoskeletons exposed in places, their movements jerky and unpredictable. The building is falling apart, with flickering lights, faulty doors, and a general air of neglect. This isn't just a cost-cutting measure, it's a ticking time bomb. The animatronic's aggressive behavior is brushed off as glitches, but the truth is far darker. These machines are hunting, driven by the spirits inside them to seek out anyone they perceive as a threat, and their behavior isn't new. The company has been hiding incidents for years, including the infamous Bite of 87, where an animatronic allegedly attacked a daytime patron. Management's solution? Blame it on human error and move on. Enter Phone Guy, the voice behind the training tapes that new employees receive. On the surface, these tapes are standard onboarding material, but they're laced with ominous warnings. Phone Guy explains the animatronic's behavior in a way that's both casual and deeply unsettling. He tells you to keep the doors closed, to conserve power, and to avoid making eye contact with the animatronics. But he doesn't tell you why, not outright. Instead, he drops hints, like how the animatronics are more active at night and how they might mistake you for an endoskeleton without its costume. It's all framed as quirks of the job, but the subtext is clear. These machines are dangerous. Phone Guy's recordings are a lifeline for new employees, but they're also a testament to the company's negligence. He's trying to prepare people for the worst without scaring them off, but his warnings only scratch the surface of what's really going on. And then, on night 4, the unthinkable happens. While making his final recording, Phone Guy is attacked by the animatronics. You can hear it in the tape, the banging on the door, his frantic instructions to stay calm, and then silence. It's a chilling moment, not just because of what happens, but because of what it reveals. Even Phone Guy, who knows more about the animatronics than almost anyone, couldn't protect himself. His death is a turning point, a stark reminder that no one is safe in this place. And then there's Mike Schmidt, the night guard who takes the job after Phone Guy's death. Mike is a mystery, but there's a popular theory that he's actually Michael Afton, the son of William Afton, working under an alias. If that's true, then Mike isn't just there to collect a paycheck. He's there to investigate, to uncover the truth about what happened to his father and the children he killed. But Mike's presence also complicates things. The animatronics, driven by the spirits of Afton's victims, mistake him for his father. To them, Mike looks like the man who killed them, and they're determined to make him pay. Mike's shifts are a nightmare. The animatronics roam the building at night, their movements unpredictable and terrifying. Freddy lurks in the shadows, his laughter echoing through the halls. Bonnie and Chica stalk the corridors, their eyes glowing in the dark. Foxy hides in Pirate Cove, waiting for the right moment to sprint toward the security office. And then there's Golden Freddy, a ghostly apparition that appears without warning, a manifestation of another victim who never got justice. Golden Freddy doesn't move like the others. He flickers into existence, a silent golden figure that crashes the game if you look at him too long. He's a reminder of the darkness at the heart of Freddy Fazbear's Pizza, a place built on tragedy and covered in lies. The animatronics' behavior isn't random. They're driven by the spirits inside them, but those spirits are confused. They don't see Mike as Mike. They see him as William Afton, the man who killed them. And so they hunt him, night after night, trying to exact revenge for what he did. But Mike isn't his father. He's just a man trying to survive, trying to understand what's happening. And as the nights go on, the stakes get higher. The animatronics become more aggressive, more relentless. The power runs out faster. The doors stop working. And through it all, Mike keeps coming back, night after night, facing the horrors head on. The FNAF 1 location is a pivotal moment in the franchise's timeline. It's where the past and present collide, where the consequences of William Afton's actions come crashing down on his son. It's a story of survival, of uncovering the truth, and of confronting the monsters that lurk in the dark. But it's also a story about deception, about a company that will do anything to protect its image, even if it means putting lives at risk. And as Mike Schmidt faces the horrors of Freddy Fazbear's Pizza, one thing becomes clear. This is only the beginning. The story of Freddy Fazbear's Pizza is far from over, and the truth is still waiting to be uncovered. By night 3, something had shifted in the animatronics. Their movements became less predictable, their aggression more calculated. The old security protocols, those carefully programmed routes meant to keep them contained, were failing. Or maybe they were being overridden. Because now Freddy had started disappearing from the cameras entirely, lurking just outside the office door until his distorted laughter crackled through the static. Bonnie and Chica had begun testing the limits of their mobility, their stiff joints creaking as they forced themselves into vents they weren't designed to navigate. And then there was Foxy, no more playing dead in Pirate Cove. He'd sprint full tilt down the hallway now, his rusted endoskeleton screeching against the tiles, stopping only when he saw your face through the door's window. This wasn't malfunction, this was purpose. Mike Schmidt, the night guard who'd taken this job, thinking it was just a paycheck, was starting to realize the truth. The animatronics weren't just glitchy, they were hunting him. Every night their behavior escalated. Every night they got closer, and by night 5, they weren't even pretending anymore. The moment the cameras flickered, they'd lunge, because they had one goal: stuff Mike into a spare Freddy suit. It wasn't cruelty. To them, it was justice. They'd seen a security guard's uniform, and in their shattered childlike minds, that meant one thing. He was the one who'd hurt them, the one who'd taken their lives. They didn't understand that Mike wasn't him. They just knew the pain and the anger and the desperate need to make someone pay. Somehow, Mike survived. 5 nights of this hell, 5 nights of listening to the animatronics' distorted voices whispering through the halls, of catching glimpses of their hollow eyes in the darkness. He played their game, kept the doors shut, conserved power, tracked their movements. And when the clock struck 6 a.m. on that 5th night, the paycheck finally appeared. $120, $50, barely minimum wage. And then the kicker, a pink slip, fired. The reason? Tampering with animatronics. And odor. That last one was the tell, because the smell wasn't coming from Mike. It was coming from the suits, the ones with the rotting corpses inside. The company knew. They had to. The newspaper clippings scattered around the office made that clear. Local pizzeria faces sanitation complaints. Parents report foul odors from animatronics. The complaints had been piling up for months. Customers noticed the stench, the dark stains seeping through the costumes, and some even claimed the animatronics were leaking a strange, mucus-like substance. The management's solution? A final, desperate promotion. Free cake for anyone who showed up on the last day. A sickening callback to the very thing that had lured the children to their deaths a decade earlier. But no one came. The place was doomed. By the end of 1993, Freddy Fazbear's Pizza closed its doors for good. The company issued a vague statement about restructuring, promising to track down and dismantle the haunted animatronics. But here's the thing about Fazbear Entertainment. They never threw anything away. The withered animatronics, those same ones that had stalked Mike through the halls, were hauled off to a storage facility, waiting. Because in the Fazbear playbook, even nightmares could be refurbished. And just 4 years later, in 1987, they'd be dragged back into the light for a new and improved location. But that's another story. For now, the original era of Freddy Fazbear's Pizza was over. The building stood empty, the animatronics silenced. But the darkness inside them, that wasn't going anywhere. Fazbear Entertainment might have gone underground, but they weren't done, not by a long shot. The 1990s were a quiet time for Freddy Fazbear's Pizza, at least on the surface. The franchise had been shuttered, the animatronics left to gather dust in the abandoned pizzeria. But beneath the silence, something darker was stirring. William Afton, the man behind the murders, wasn't done. Not yet. By this point, Afton had already committed his most heinous acts, but his obsession with immortality and control had only deepened. And so, under the alias Dave Miller, he returned to the very place where it all began, the original Freddy Fazbear's Pizza. This wasn't nostalgia, it was science. Afton was there to conduct experiments on something he called Remnant. Remnant was a supernatural substance, a byproduct of agony and death that seemed to bind souls to objects. Afton had stumbled onto this concept during his earlier killings, and now he wanted to harness it. His goal was simple: to cheat deaths. But to do that, he needed to understand how Remnant worked. And the key to that understanding lay in the animatronics themselves. Freddy, Bonnie, Chica, and Foxy weren't just machines. They were haunted, each one housing the soul of a child Afton had murdered. These spirits, Gabriel, Jeremy, Susie, Fritz, and Cassidy, were trapped, their agony fueling the remnant Afton sought to study. So, Afton got to work. He began dismantling the animatronics one by one in the pizzeria's back room, carefully extracting the remnant they contained. This wasn't just destruction, it was dissection. He was methodical, almost clinical, as he tore apart the very creations he'd once helped build. But as he worked, something began to happen. The children's spirits, restless and vengeful, started to manifest. They weren't just passive observers, they were aware of what Afton was doing, and they weren't going to let him get away with it. The first sign of trouble came when Freddy's eyes flickered to life, glowing with an unnatural light. Then Bonnie's head turned, its gaze locking onto Afton. Chica's beak creaked open, and Foxy's hook twitched. One by one, the animatronics began to move, not as machines, but as vessels of rage. Afton, realizing he was no longer alone, tried to keep his composure. He was a man who thrived on control, but this was something he hadn't accounted for. The spirits were closing in, their presence growing stronger with every passing moment. Cornered in the back room, Afton did what he always did. He looked for an escape. His eyes, they landed on the spring Bonnie suit, the very same one he'd used to lure the children to their deaths. It was a relic of the past, worn and decaying, but it was also his last hope. In his panic, Afton didn't stop to consider the risks. He climbed into the suit, hoping it would protect him from the vengeful spirits. But he'd forgotten one crucial detail. Spring-lock suits were notoriously dangerous, especially when they weren't properly maintained. The spring-lock mechanism inside the suit was designed to hold the animatronic parts in place, allowing a person to wear it safely. But over time, moisture and neglect had weakened the locks. As soon as Afton triggered the mechanism, it failed. The locks snapped, and the suit's internal components sprang into action, but not in the way they were supposed to. Metal rods and gears tore through Afton's body, impaling him in multiple places. The pain was excruciating, and death wasn't immediate. He was trapped, crushed, and bleeding out inside the very suit he'd used to commit his crimes. But here's the twist. Afton, it didn't die. Not completely. The remnant he'd been studying, the very thing he'd sought to control, kept him tethered to the world of the living. The children's spirits, still bound by his actions, inadvertently ensured his survival. His soul fused with the spring Bonnie suit, transforming him into something monstrous. The man who had once been William Afton was gone. In his place was Springtrap, a rotting, undead abomination driven by the same hunger for power and immortality that had consumed him in life. This was Afton's downfall, but it wasn't the end. If anything, it was the beginning of something even darker. Springtrap wasn't just a man in a suit. He was a fusion of flesh and metal, a grotesque reminder of Afton's sins. And while the children's spirits had succeeded in exacting their revenge, They hadn't been freed. They were still trapped, their agony fueling the cycle of violence that Afton had set in motion. The pizzeria, once a place of joy, had become a tomb, not just for the children, but for Afton himself. As the 1990s gave way to the 2000s, the legacy of Freddy Fazbear's Pizza continued to haunt the town. The pizzeria might have been abandoned, but the horrors it contained were far from over. Afton's experiments had opened a door, and what lay on the other side was something even he couldn't fully control. Springtrap was just the first step in a larger plan, one that would eventually lead to the events of Fazbear's Fright and beyond. But for now, Afton's story was a cautionary tale, a grim reminder of what happens when ambition turns to obsession, and when the pursuit of immortality comes at the cost of one's humanity. And so, the stage was set for the next chapter in the saga. Afton's transformation into Springtrap wasn't the end of his story. It was the beginning of a new nightmare, one that would ripple through the decades and shape the fate of everyone connected to Freddy Fazbear's Pizza. The experiments had failed, but the fallout was just beginning. And as we'll see in the next part of this timeline, the consequences of Afton's actions would be felt far beyond the walls of that abandoned pizzeria. So Springtrap is sealed inside the abandoned pizzeria, dormant but conscious. William Afton's body is trapped, but his mind is still there, lingering in that decaying suit. The pizzeria itself becomes a tomb, a place frozen in time, with the remnants of Afton's experiments scattered throughout. His notes on Remnant, the mysterious substance he believed could bind souls to machinery, are left behind. These notes would later be discovered, either by Fazbear Entertainment or other curious parties, but for now, they're just another piece of the puzzle buried in the wreckage. Meanwhile, the puppet, the spirit of Charlotte Emily, remains active. She's still watching over the other spirits, still trying to protect them, but she's unable to fully free them. Her presence is a constant, a reminder that the tragedies of the past aren't entirely over. But as the years pass, the Bite of 87 and the investigations that followed begin to fade from public memory. People move on, and Fazbear Entertainment seizes the opportunity to distance itself from its dark history. They start liquidating old assets, selling off parts of the original animatronics. Some of these parts are repurposed, others are lost, but they all carry traces of the souls that were once bound to them. The sealed pizzeria becomes a local urban legend. Rumors spread about a yellow rabbit haunting the ruins, a figure that lurks in the shadows of the decaying building. These stories are dismissed as folklore, but they're rooted in truth. Springtrap is still there, still waiting, though few know it. Meanwhile, Afton's family remains unaware of his fate. Michael Afton, his son, begins to piece together the truth about his father's crimes. He doesn't know where William is or what's happened to him, but he's determined to find out. Elizabeth Afton, or at least the remnant of her spirit, is still trapped in Circus Baby, part of the Funtime animatronics that remain underground. Their AI systems are active, but dormant, waiting for someone to awaken them. Fazbear Entertainment, meanwhile, is pivoting to new ventures. They're laying the groundwork for what will eventually become Fazbear's Fright, a horror attraction designed to capitalize on the urban legends surrounding the company's past. It's a cynical move, but one that makes sense given their history. They're trying to turn their tragedies into profit, to rebrand themselves as something edgy and exciting. But the truth is still out there, waiting to be uncovered, so let's break this down piece by piece. The abandoned pizzeria is more than just a building. It's a symbol of everything that's gone wrong. Springtrap's presence inside is a constant reminder of Afton's crimes, but it's also a ticking time bomb. The suit is damaged, but it's still functional, and Afton's consciousness is still intact. He's not dead, not really. He's just trapped, waiting for someone to find him. The puppet, on the other hand, is still trying to do what she's always done: protect the other spirits. But her efforts are limited. She can't free them, not completely, and she can't stop the cycle of violence that Afton set in motion. The Bite of 87 is a key moment in the timeline, but by the 1990s, it's largely forgotten. The investigations have ended, the lawsuits have been settled, and Fazbear Entertainment is moving on. They're selling off old assets, trying to erase their past, but they can't escape it completely. The parts of the original animatronics are still out there, still carrying the remnants of the souls that were once bound to them. These parts are repurposed, sold off, or lost, but they're still a part of the story. The sealed pizzeria is another piece of the puzzle. It's become a local legend, a place where people tell stories about a yellow rabbit haunting the ruins. These stories are dismissed as folklore, but they're rooted in truth. Springtrap is still there, still waiting, though few know it. The rumors keep the pizzeria alive in the public consciousness, even as Fazbear Entertainment tries to distance itself from its past. Meanwhile, Afton's family is still dealing with the fallout of his actions. Michael Afton is starting to piece together the truth about his father's crimes. He doesn't know where William is or what's happened to him, but he's determined to find out. Elizabeth Afton, or at least the remnant of her spirit, is still trapped in Circus Baby, part of the Funtime animatronics that remain underground. Their AI systems are active but dormant, waiting for someone to awaken them. Fazbear Entertainment is pivoting to new ventures, laying the groundwork for what will eventually become Fazbear's Fright. It's a horror attraction designed to capitalize on the urban legends surrounding the company's past. They're trying to turn their tragedies into profit, to rebrand themselves as something edgy and exciting. But the truth is still out there waiting to be uncovered. So, what does all of this mean? It means that the story isn't over. The abandoned pizzeria, Springtrap, the puppet, the fun times, Fazbear Entertainment's new ventures, they're all pieces of a puzzle that's still being put together. The timeline is complex, but it's also cohesive, with each event leading naturally into the next. And as we move forward, we'll see how these pieces come together to create the larger story of Five Nights at Freddy's. Let's dive deeper into Springtrap's containment. The pizzeria is sealed, but it's not entirely forgotten. Rumors about the Yellow Rabbit persist, keeping the building alive in the public consciousness. People tell stories about hearing noises coming from inside, about seeing a figure moving in the shadows. These stories are dismissed as folklore, but they're rooted in truth. Springtrap is still there, still waiting, though few know it. The suit is damaged, but it's still functional, and Afton's consciousness is still intact. He's not dead, not really. He's just trapped, waiting for someone to find him. The puppet, meanwhile, is still trying to do what she's always done: protect the other spirits. But her efforts are limited. She can't free them, not completely, and she can't stop the cycle of violence that Afton set in motion. Her presence is a constant reminder of the tragedies of the past, but she's also a symbol of hope. She's still trying to make things right, even if she can't fully succeed. The Bite of 87 is a key moment in the timeline, but by the 1990s it's largely forgotten. The investigations have ended, the lawsuits have been settled, and Fazbear Entertainment is moving on. They're selling off old assets, trying to erase their past, but they can't escape it completely. The parts of the original animatronics are still out there, still carrying the remnants of the souls that were once bound to them. These parts are repurposed, sold off, or lost, but they're still a part of the story. The sealed pizzeria is another piece of the puzzle. It's become a local legend, a place where people tell stories about a yellow rabbit haunting the ruins. These stories are dismissed as folklore, but they're rooted in truth. Springtrap is still there, still waiting, though few know it. The rumors keep the pizzeria alive in the public consciousness, even as Fazbear Entertainment tries to distance itself from its past. Meanwhile, Afton's family is still dealing with the fallout of his actions. Michael Afton is starting to piece together the truth about his father's crimes. He doesn't know where William is or what's happened to him, but he's determined to find out. Elizabeth Afton, or at least the remnant of her spirit, is still trapped in Circus Baby, part of the Funtime animatronics that remain underground. Their AI systems are active, but dormant, waiting for someone to awaken them. Fazbear Entertainment is pivoting to new ventures, laying the groundwork for what will eventually become Fazbear's Fright. It's a horror attraction designed to capitalize on the urban legends surrounding the company's past. They're trying to turn their tragedies into profit, to rebrand themselves as something edgy and exciting. But the truth is still out there waiting to be uncovered. So, what does all of this mean? It means that the story isn't over. The abandoned pizzeria, Springtrap, the puppet, the fun times, Fazbear Entertainment's new ventures, they're all pieces of a puzzle that's still being put together. The timeline is complex, but it's also cohesive, with each event leading naturally into the next. And as we move forward, we'll see how these pieces come together to create the larger story of Five Nights at Freddy's. So, after years of silence, Freddy Fazbear's Pizza was about to make a comeback, but not in the way anyone expected. By 2023, the once iconic franchise had faded into urban legend, a cautionary tale whispered about in hushed tones. But where most saw tragedy, someone else saw opportunity. Enter Fazbear's Fright, the horror attraction. This wasn't a pizzeria. It was a Halloween experience, a haunted house designed to capitalize on the dark myths surrounding Freddy's, and it was about to unleash something far more terrifying than anyone anticipated. The idea was simple: take the creepy reputation of Freddy Fazbear's Pizza and turn it into a spectacle. The team behind Fazbear's Fright, led by an unnamed manager, scoured the abandoned locations of the original pizzerias, salvaging whatever they could find. Broken animatronics, faded posters, even old arcade machines. Anything that could sell the illusion of stepping into a place that time forgot. But what they didn't realize was that they weren't just digging up props, they were disturbing something much darker. During one of these salvage operations, they stumbled upon the boarded up safe room of the original Freddy Fazbear's Pizza. Safe rooms were secret spaces designed for employees, places where they could retreat in case of emergencies. But this one had been sealed off for decades, and for good reason. Inside, they found Springtrap. At first glance, it was just another animatronic, a battered, decaying rabbit suit. But upon closer inspection, they discovered the horrifying truth. Inside the suit was the corpse of William Afton, the man behind the murders that had haunted Freddy's for years. Somehow he'd been trapped in the Spring Bonnie suit after it malfunctioned, sealing his fate in a gruesome fusion of man and machine. The team, oblivious to Springtrap's true nature, saw him as the perfect centerpiece for their attraction. They brought him back to Fazbear's Fright, where he was positioned as the main event. Visitors would walk through the dimly lit halls, surrounded by relics of Freddy's past, until they reached the pièce de résistance, the decaying animatronic rabbit, frozen in a macabre pose. What they didn't know was that Springtrap wasn't just a prop. He was alive, or at least something close to it. William Afton's consciousness, twisted and malevolent, still lingered within the suit, and he was about to wake up. To keep an eye on things, Fazbear's Fright hired a night guard. This wasn't unusual. Haunted attractions often needed someone to monitor the premises after hours. But this night guard, possibly Michael Afton, William's son, was stepping into a nightmare. From the first night, things felt off. The attraction was filled with strange noises, creaks, whispers, the distant sound of music. And then there were the phantoms, ghostly versions of the original animatronics: Phantom Freddy, Phantom Chica, Phantom Foxy, Phantom Mangle, Phantom Balloon Boy, and Phantom Puppet began appearing throughout the building. These weren't physical entities, they were hallucinations, flickering in and out of view like echoes of the past. Whether they were caused by faulty wiring, the guard's deteriorating mental state, or something supernatural, they added to the growing sense of dread. But the phantoms were just the beginning. The real threat was Springtrap. At first, he was motionless, just as the team had left him. But as the nights went on, he began to move. The night guard, monitoring the attraction through a network of security cameras, would catch glimpses of him shifting, turning his head, or disappearing from one camera's view only to reappear in another. Springtrap wasn't just active, he was hunting, and he was smart. He avoided the cameras, sticking to the shadows, inching closer to the guard's office with each passing hour. Adding to the psychological toll were the audio hallucinations. The guard began hearing phone calls, old recordings from the original Freddy Fazbear's Pizza, featuring the voice of Phone Guy, the franchise's ill-fated employee. These calls, filled with advice and warnings, were a haunting reminder of the horrors that had unfolded decades earlier. Whether they were a figment of the guard's imagination or a supernatural echo of the past, they served to heighten the tension, blurring the line between reality and nightmare. As the week progressed, Springtrap's movements became more aggressive. He wasn't just wandering aimlessly anymore, he was stalking, testing the guard's defenses, and exploiting any weakness he could find. It was clear that William Afton's malice hadn't faded with time. If anything, it had grown stronger, fueled by decades of isolation and rage. By the final night, Springtrap was relentless, his glowing eyes piercing through the darkness as he closed in on his target. Fazbear's Fright was supposed to be a tribute to the legends of Freddy Fazbear's Pizza, but it had become something far more dangerous. The team had unknowingly awakened a monster, and now they were paying the price. Springtrap wasn't just an attraction, he was a predator, and the night guard was running out of time. So here's where things get intense. The night guard at Fazbear's Fright, armed with just a flashlight and a control panel, is trying to survive the night. Their main tool? Audio cues, specifically the sounds of children laughing. It's a clever tactic, mimicking the behavior of the original animatronics to lure Springtrap away. But here's the thing. Springtrap isn't just some mindless machine. He's William Afton, the man behind the murders, trapped in this decaying suit for decades, and he's not easily fooled. The guard's strategy works sometimes, but Springtrap's movements are unpredictable, his aggression growing with each passing hour. This is where the phantom animatronics come in. These ghostly apparitions, remnants of the original animatronics, aren't just there to scare the guard. They actively interfere with the systems, causing ventilation errors and visual distortions. The guard's environment becomes a nightmare, disorienting them and making it harder to keep track of Springtrap's movements. The phantoms aren't just random hauntings, though. They're manifestations of the lingering spirits of Afton's victims, seeking revenge. Their interference isn't just about terror, it's about justice. And then there's Springtrap himself. His behavior hints at his true identity. He's not just stalking the guard, he's hunting. There's a method to his movements, a chilling intelligence that suggests he's more than just an animatronic. This is William Afton, the man who started it all, still alive in some twisted way thanks to the Remnant, a supernatural substance that binds souls to animatronics. The spirits of his victims are still there too, haunting him, driving him, and fueling his rage. By the final night, everything is falling apart. Springtrap's aggression peaks, and the attraction's systems begin failing catastrophically. The guard is barely holding on, scrambling to keep the ventilation running and the cameras active, but it's a losing battle. The place is falling apart, and Springtrap is closing in. Then the fire breaks out. It's unclear exactly how it started. Some say it was faulty wiring, others suspect arson, but the implications are clear. Someone wanted Fazbear's Fright destroyed. The leading theories point to Henry Emily, the co-founder of Fazbear Entertainment, or Michael Afton, William's son, as the possible culprits. Whoever it was, their goal was likely to end William's legacy once and for all. The fire spreads quickly, consuming the attraction and destroying most of the artifacts inside. The phantom animatronics, already spectral and unstable, are obliterated in the flames. But Springtrap survives. Somehow he crawls out of the wreckage, his suit charred but still functional. It's a testament to his resilience, a horrifying reminder that William Afton isn't done yet. Local news reports cover the fire, but they downplay the incident. Springtrap's survival is dismissed as a rumor, and the public remains largely unaware of the true horror that escaped the flames. But for those who know the truth, the implications are chilling. William Afton is still out there, and his legacy of horror continues. The aftermath leaves Springtrap at large, setting the stage for future events. The fire at Fazbear's Fright wasn't the end. It was just another chapter in a story that refuses to die. William Afton's survival ensures that the nightmare isn't over, and the stage is set for even darker events to come. So let's break this down further. The Night Guard's use of audio cues is a direct callback to the original games, where mimicking the animatronic's behavior was key to survival. But here, it's not enough. Springtrap's intelligence and unpredictability make him a far more dangerous threat. The phantom animatronics add another layer of complexity, their interference with the systems creating a constant state of tension. Springtrap's true identity is hinted at through his behavior. He's not just stalking, he's hunting, driven by the same malevolence that defined William Afton in life. The spirits of his victims, still trapped in the animatronics, are haunting him, seeking revenge. This duality, Springtrap as both hunter and hunted, adds a chilling depth to his character. The fire at Fazbear's Fright is a pivotal moment. It's not just an accident, it's a deliberate act, likely orchestrated by someone who knew the truth about William Afton. Henry Emily and Michael Afton are the prime suspects, each with their own motivations. Henry, driven by guilt and a desire for justice, might have seen the fire as a way to end William's reign of terror. Michael, seeking redemption for his father's sins, could have done the same, but the fire doesn't accomplish its goal. Springtrap survives, crawling out of the wreckage and disappearing into the night. His survival is a testament to the power of Remnant, the supernatural substance that binds souls to animatronics. It's also a reminder that William Afton's evil is persistent, a force that refuses to be extinguished. The local news reports downplay the incident, dismissing Springtrap's survival as a rumor. But for those who know the truth, the implications are clear. William Afton is still out there, and his legacy of horror continues. The fire at Fazbear's Fright wasn't the end. It was just another chapter in a story that refuses to die. The aftermath leaves Springtrap at large, setting the stage for future events. His survival ensures that the nightmare isn't over, and the stage is set for even darker events to come. The fire at Fazbear's Fright wasn't the end. It was just another chapter in a story that refuses to die. William Afton's survival ensures that the nightmare isn't over, and the stage is set for even darker events to come. So let's delve deeper into the mechanics of the Night Guard's survival tactics. The audio cues, specifically the sounds of children laughing, are designed to mimic the behavior of the original animatronics. This strategy works sometimes, but Springtrap's intelligence and unpredictability make him a far more dangerous threat. The Phantom animatronics, meanwhile, add another layer of complexity. Their interference with the systems creates a constant state of tension, making it harder for the guard to keep track of Springtrap's movements. Springtrap's true identity is hinted at through his behavior. He's not just stalking, he's hunting, driven by the same malevolence that defined William Afton in life. The spirits of his victims, still trapped in the animatronics, are haunting him, seeking revenge. This duality, Springtrap as both hunter and hunted, adds a chilling depth to his character. The fire at Fazbear's Fright is a pivotal moment. It's not just an accident, it's a deliberate act, likely orchestrated by someone who knew the truth about William Afton. Henry Emily and Michael Afton are the prime suspects, each with their own motivations. Henry, driven by guilt and a desire for justice, might have seen the fire as a way to end William's reign of terror. Michael, seeking redemption for his father's sins, could have done the same. But the fire doesn't accomplish its goal. Springtrap survives, crawling out of the wreckage and disappearing into the night. His survival is a testament to the power of Remnant, the supernatural substance that binds souls to animatronics. It's also a reminder that William Afton's evil is persistent, a force that refuses to be extinguished. The local news reports downplay the incident, dismissing Springtrap's survival as a rumor. But for those who know the truth, the implications are clear. William Afton is still out there, and his legacy of horror continues. The fire at Fazbear's Fright wasn't the end. It was just another chapter in a story that refuses to die. The aftermath leaves Springtrap at large, setting the stage for future events. His survival ensures that the nightmare isn't over, and the stage is set for even darker events to come. The fire at Fazbear's Fright wasn't the end. It was just another chapter in a story that refuses to die. William Afton's survival ensures that the nightmare isn't over, and the stage is set for even darker events to come. So, let's delve deeper into the mechanics of the Night Guard's survival tactics. The audio cues, specifically the sounds of children laughing, are designed to mimic the behavior of the original animatronics. This strategy works sometimes, but Springtrap's intelligence and unpredictability make him a far more dangerous threat. The Phantom animatronics, meanwhile, add another layer of complexity. Their interference with the systems creates a constant state of tension, making it harder for the guard to keep track of Springtrap's movements. Springtrap's true identity is hinted at through his behavior. He's not just stalking, he's hunting, driven by the same malevolence that defined William Afton in life. The spirits of his victims, still trapped in the animatronics, are haunting him, seeking revenge. This duality, Springtrap as both hunter and hunted, adds a chilling depth to his character. The fire at Fazbear's Fright is a pivotal moment. It's not just an accident, it's a deliberate act, likely orchestrated by someone who knew the truth about William Afton. Henry Emily and Michael Afton are the prime suspects, each with their own motivations. Henry, driven by guilt and a desire for justice, might have seen the fire as a way to end William's reign of terror. Michael, seeking redemption for his father's sins, could have done the same, but the fire doesn't accomplish its goal. Springtrap survives, crawling out of the wreckage and disappearing into the night. His survival is a testament to the power of Remnant, the supernatural substance that binds souls to animatronics. It's also a reminder that William Afton's evil is persistent, a force that refuses to be extinguished. The local news reports downplay the incident, dismissing Springtrap's survival as a rumor. But for those who know the truth, the implications are clear. William Afton is still out there, and his legacy of horror continues. The fire at Fazbear's Fright wasn't the end. It was just another chapter in a story that refuses to die. The aftermath leaves Springtrap at large, setting the stage for future events. His survival ensures that the nightmare isn't over, and the stage is set for even darker events to come. The fire at Fazbear's Fright wasn't the end. It was just another chapter in a story that refuses to die. William Afton's survival ensures that the nightmare isn't over, and the stage is set for even darker events to come. So let's delve deeper into the mechanics of the Night Guard's survival tactics. The audio cues, specifically the sounds of children laughing, are designed to mimic the behavior of the original animatronics. This strategy works sometimes, but Springtrap's intelligence and unpredictability make him a far more dangerous threat. The Phantom animatronics, meanwhile, add another layer of complexity. Their interference with the systems creates a constant state of tension, making it harder for the guard to keep track of Springtrap's movements. Springtrap's true identity is hinted at through his behavior. He's not just stalking, he's hunting, driven by the same malevolence that defined William Afton in life. The spirits of his victims, still trapped in the animatronics, are haunting him, seeking revenge. This duality, Springtrap as both hunter and hunted, adds a chilling depth to his character. The fire at Fazbear's Fright is a pivotal moment. It's not just an accident, it's a deliberate act, likely orchestrated by someone who knew the truth about William Afton. Henry Emily and Michael Afton are the prime suspects, each with their own motivations. Henry, driven by guilt and a desire for justice, might have seen the fire as a way to end William's reign of terror. Michael, seeking redemption for his father's sins, could have done the same. But the fire doesn't accomplish its goal. Springtrap survives, crawling out of the wreckage and disappearing into the night. His survival is a testament to the power of Remnant, the supernatural substance that binds souls to animatronics. It's also a reminder that William Afton's evil is persistent, a force that refuses to be extinguished. The local news reports downplay the incident, dismissing Springtrap's survival as a rumor. But for those who know the truth, the implications are clear. William Afton is still out there, and his legacy of horror continues. The fire at Fazbear's Fright wasn't the end. It was just another chapter in a story that refuses to die. The aftermath leaves Springtrap at large, setting the stage for future events. His survival ensures that the nightmare isn't over, and the stage is set for even darker events to come. The fire at Fazbear's Fright wasn't the end. It was just another chapter in a story that refuses to die. William Afton's survival ensures that the nightmare isn't over, and the stage is set for even darker events to come. So let's delve deeper into the mechanics of the Night Guard's survival tactics. The audio cues, specifically the sounds of children laughing, are designed to mimic the behavior of the original animatronics. This strategy works sometimes, but Springtrap's intelligence and unpredictability make him a far more dangerous threat. The Phantom animatronics, meanwhile, add another layer of complexity. Their interference with the systems creates a constant state of tension, making it harder for the guard to keep track of Springtrap's movements. Springtrap's true identity is hinted at through his behavior. He's not just stalking, he's hunting, driven by the same malevolence that defined William Afton in life. The spirits of his victims, still trapped in the animatronics, are haunting him, seeking revenge. This duality, Springtrap as both hunter and hunted, adds a chilling depth to his character. The fire at Fazbear's Fright is a pivotal moment. It's not just an accident, it's a deliberate act, likely orchestrated by someone who knew the truth about William Afton. Henry Emily and Michael Afton are the prime suspects, each with their own motivations. Henry, driven by guilt and a desire for justice, might have seen the fire as a way to end William's reign of terror. Michael, seeking redemption for his father's sins, could have done the same. But the fire doesn't accomplish its goal. Springtrap survives, crawling out of the wreckage and disappearing into the night. His survival is a testament to the power of Remnant, the supernatural substance that binds souls to animatronics. It's also a reminder that William Afton's evil is persistent, a force that refuses to be extinguished. The local news reports downplay the incident, dismissing Springtrap's survival as a rumor. But for those who know the truth, the implications are clear. William Afton is still out there, and his legacy of horror continues. The fire at Fazbear's Fright wasn't the end. It was just another chapter in a story that refuses to die. The aftermath leaves Springtrap at large, setting the stage for future events. His survival ensures that the nightmare isn't over, and the stage is set for even darker events to come. The fire at Fazbear's Fright wasn't the end. It was just another chapter in a story that refuses to die. William Afton's survival ensures that the nightmare isn't over, and the stage is set for even darker events to come. So let's delve deeper into the mechanics of the Night Guard's survival tactics. The audio cues, specifically the sounds of children laughing, are designed to mimic the behavior of the original animatronics. This strategy works, sometimes, but Springtrap's intelligence and unpredictability make him a far more dangerous threat. The Phantom animatronics, meanwhile, add another layer of complexity. Their interference with the systems creates a constant state of tension, making it harder for the guard to keep track of Springtrap's movements. Springtrap's true identity is hinted at through his behavior. He's not just stalking, he's hunting, driven by the same malevolence that defined William Afton in life. The spirits of his victims, still trapped in the animatronics, are haunting him, seeking revenge. This duality, Springtrap as both hunter and hunted, adds a chilling depth to his character. The fire at Fazbear's Fright is a pivotal moment. It's not just an accident, it's a deliberate act, likely orchestrated by someone who knew the truth about William Afton. Henry Emily and Michael Afton are the prime suspects, each with their own motivations. Henry, driven by guilt and a desire for justice, might have seen the fire as a way to end William's reign of terror. Michael, seeking redemption for his father's sins, could have done the same. But the fire doesn't accomplish its goal. Springtrap survives, crawling out of the wreckage and disappearing into the night. His survival is a testament to the power of Remnant, the supernatural substance that binds souls to animatronics. It's also a reminder that William Afton's evil is persistent, a force that refuses to be extinguished. The local news reports downplay the incident, dismissing Springtrap's survival as a rumor. But for those who know the truth, the implications are clear. William Afton is still out there, and his legacy of horror continues. The fire at Fazbear's Fright wasn't the end. It was just another chapter in a story that refuses to die. The aftermath leaves Springtrap at large, setting the stage for future events. His survival ensures that the nightmare isn't over, and the stage is set for even darker events to come. The fire at Fazbear's Fright wasn't the end. It was just another chapter in a story that refuses to die. William Afton's survival ensures that the nightmare isn't over, and the stage is set for even darker events to come. So let's delve deeper into the mechanics of the Night Guard's survival tactics. After the fiery end of Fazbear's Fright in the early 2020s, the story of William Afton and his twisted legacy takes a darker, more personal turn. This is the era of Sister Location, a chapter that delves deep into the Afton family's tragedy and the cold, calculated machinery of William's ambitions. By this point, William, still operating under the guise of Afton Robotics, had shifted his focus from Freddy Fazbear's Pizza to something far more sinister. His new creations, the Funtime animatronics, weren't just entertainers, they were designed with a horrifying purpose: to capture children. Each one, from Circus Baby to Funtime Freddy, was equipped with advanced kidnapping mechanisms hidden beneath their colorful exteriors. It was a chilling evolution of William's experiments, and it would set off a chain of events that would tear his family apart. The first domino fell with the planned opening of Circus Baby's Pizza World, a new venue meant to showcase William's Funtime animatronics. But before the grand opening, William held a private demonstration for a select group, including his own children. This was where tragedy struck. Circus Baby, the star of the show, malfunctioned. In a moment that would haunt the Afton family forever, Baby killed William's young daughter, Elizabeth. The details are murky, but it's believed that Elizabeth was drawn to Baby's ice cream dispenser, a feature William had designed to lure children. When the machine activated, it was too late. Elizabeth's death forced the immediate cancellation of Circus Baby's Pizza World, and the Funtime animatronics were quietly moved to a new location, Circus Baby's Entertainment and Rental. This underground facility, accessible only through private elevators, became the new home for the Funtime animatronics. Here, they were repurposed as rental units for private parties, a seemingly innocuous service that hid their true nature. But William's plans didn't stop there. He recorded a message instructing his eldest son, Michael Afton, to put her back together. This cryptic directive likely referred to Elizabeth's spirit, now trapped within Circus Baby. Michael, who had already been drawn into his father's dark world, obeyed. He took a job as a night technician at Circus Baby's Entertainment and Rental, tasked with maintaining the animatronics and ensuring they were ready for rental. Michael's nights were guided by Hand Unit, a cheerful, automated assistant that walked him through his tasks. These tasks included activating the animatronics in their modules, performing maintenance, and navigating the labyrinthine facility. But Hand Unit's cheerful tone masked the danger lurking in every corner. The Funtime animatronics, now possessed by the spirits of their victims, were anything but cooperative. Funtime Freddy, with his Bonnie puppet, would taunt Michael from the shadows. Ballora, the graceful ballerina, moved with an eerie precision that made her seem almost alive. And then there was Circus Baby, who claimed to want to help Michael, but was clearly hiding something. It was Baby who revealed the first cracks in the facade. She spoke to Michael directly, warning him about the other animatronics and offering advice on how to survive. But her motives were far from pure. Baby, now possessed by Elizabeth's spirit, was manipulating Michael, guiding him into increasingly dangerous situations. She wanted him to free her, to put her back together, as William had instructed. But her methods were ruthless. She orchestrated encounters with the other animatronics, forcing Michael to confront their aggression head-on. Each night brought new challenges, and Michael's determination was tested at every turn. One of the most chilling discoveries Michael made was the existence of the scooping room. This was where the animatronics were disassembled and reassembled, a process facilitated by a mechanism known as the scooper. The scooper, a massive mechanical arm, was designed to remove the endoskeletons from the animatronics, leaving their outer shells intact. But its purpose extended beyond maintenance. The scooper was also a key part of William's experiments, a tool for extracting and transferring the animatronics' haunted souls. Michael's realization of this was a turning point. He began to understand the true nature of his father's work and the horrors he had unleashed. As Michael continued his work, the animatronics' behavior grew more erratic. Funtime Freddy's taunts became more personal, Ballora's movements more aggressive, and Circus Baby's manipulations more overt. It was clear that these machines were no longer just machines. They were vessels for the spirits of the dead, driven by a desire for freedom and revenge. Michael's nights became a desperate struggle to survive, as he navigated the facility's traps and avoided the animatronics' deadly advances. But his determination never wavered. He was driven by a sense of duty, a need to set things right, even if it meant risking his own life. The culmination of Michael's ordeal came when he finally confronted Circus Baby in the scooping room. Baby, still pretending to be helpful, revealed her true intentions. She wanted Michael to use the scooper on himself to free her spirit by sacrificing his own body. It was a horrifying proposition, but Michael, ever the dutiful son, complied. The scooper activated, and Michael's body was hollowed out, leaving him a shell of his former self. But this wasn't the end for Michael. Somehow he survived, his body now a vessel for the animatronic spirits. It was a grim twist of fate, one that would set the stage for the next chapter in the Afton family's story. Sister Location is a story of betrayal, loss, and the consequences of unchecked ambition. It's a tale that delves deep into the Afton family's tragedy, revealing the human cost of William's experiments. By the end of Michael's time at Circus Baby's Entertainment and Rental, the stage was set for the final act. The animatronics were free, Michael was forever changed, and William's legacy of horror continued to unfold. But this was only the beginning of the end. The next chapter would bring the story full circle, back to the place where it all began, Freddy Fazbear's Pizza. But Michael Afton wasn't just there to work. He was there because his sister, Elizabeth, had been lured and killed by Circus Baby years earlier. William Afton, their father, had designed the Funtime animatronics, not just to entertain but to capture and kill children. Each one was built with specific features for this purpose. Funtime Foxy could mimic voices to lure victims. Ballora had advanced motion sensors, and Circus Baby herself had a claw built into her chest to grab and store a child. Michael didn't know the full extent of his father's experiments yet, but he was about to find out. The animatronics, particularly Circus Baby, had been planning their escape for a long time. They were intelligent, driven by the remnant, a supernatural essence derived from the souls of the dead that William had infused into them, and they saw Michael as their ticket out. Circus Baby, the leader of the group, was more than just an animatronic. She was Elizabeth's soul, trapped in the machine after her death. She was cunning, manipulative, and desperate to escape the underground facility. The other Funtime animatronics, Funtime Foxy, Ballora, and Funtime Freddy, were also aware of their imprisonment. They were haunted by the souls of other victims, and they shared Baby's desire for freedom. Together, they hatched a plan. They would dismantle themselves, combine their endoskeletons into a single entity, and use Michael's body as a disguise to leave the facility. This fusion of animatronics would come to be known as Enard. Enard was a grotesque amalgamation of wires, masks, and endoskeleton parts. It wasn't just a physical fusion, it was a collective consciousness, a hive mind of the souls and programming of the animatronics. Circus Baby was the driving force behind Enard's creation, but she wasn't fully in control. The other animatronics had their own agendas, and tensions within the group would eventually lead to its disintegration. But for now, Enard was united in one goal: escape. To achieve this, Enard needed Michael's body. They lured him to the scooping room, a horrifying space where the animatronics were scooped, their endoskeletons removed from their shells. Michael was unaware of what was about to happen. He thought he was following instructions, completing his tasks. But Enard had other plans. When Michael entered the scooping room, he was ambushed. The scooper, a massive mechanical device, was used not on an animatronic but on him. It removed his organs, hollowing out his body. Enard then crawled inside, using Michael's skin as a disguise. What happened next was both tragic and grotesque. Michael's body, now controlled by Enard, left the facility. Enard's plan had worked. They were free, but Michael wasn't dead. Somehow, despite being scooped, he was still alive. His body was a rotting, decaying shell, but he was conscious. He could feel Ennard moving inside him, controlling his actions. It was a nightmare, but Michael endured. He wandered the streets, trying to blend into society, but it wasn't long before his body began to fail. The skin started to rot, the smell became unbearable, and Ennard realized they couldn't maintain the disguise. Eventually, they abandoned Michael's body in an alleyway, leaving him to decompose. But Michael didn't die. He couldn't. The remnant that had kept the animatronics alive was now keeping him alive too. He was a reanimated corpse, a hollow shell of a man, but he was still himself, and he was furious. Michael had learned the truth about his father's experiments, about the suffering of the animatronics, and about the fate of his sister. He knew William Afton was responsible for all of it, and he vowed to find him and make him pay. This resolve would lead Michael to the events of Freddy Fazbear's Pizzeria Simulator, but that's a story for later. Ennard, meanwhile, didn't stay together for long. The collective was unstable, and tensions between Circus Baby and the others grew. Baby was too dominant, too controlling, and the other animatronics resented her. Eventually, Ennard split into two entities, Molten Freddy and Scrap Baby. Molten Freddy was the majority of the collective. Funtime Freddy, Funtime Foxy, and Ballora now fused into a single chaotic being. Scrap Baby was Circus Baby's independent form, rebuilt and more determined than ever to achieve her goals. Both would play significant roles in the future, but for now, they were on their own. The events of Sister Location revealed the depth of William Afton's experiments with Remnant and the tragic fates of his children. Elizabeth's soul was trapped in Circus Baby. Michael was left a reanimated corpse, and their brother, the crying child, had died years earlier in the bite of 83. William's obsession with immortality and control had destroyed his family, but it hadn't stopped him. He continued his experiments, creating new horrors and perpetuating the cycle of violence. Michael's survival, however, was a turning point. He was no longer just a victim, he was a hunter. Armed with the knowledge of his father's crimes, he set out to stop him. This journey would bring him face to face with the remnants of his family's past and the horrors William had unleashed. But Michael wasn't alone. The animatronics, driven by their own pain and anger, were also seeking retribution. The stage was set for a final confrontation, one that would bring the Afton family's story to a bloody and tragic end. But before that could happen, there were more horrors to uncover. The events of Sister Location were just one chapter in a much larger story, one that would continue to unfold in the shadows of Freddy Fazbear's legacy. The experiments with Remnant, the creation of the Funtime animatronics, and the fusion of Ennard were all pieces of a puzzle that was slowly coming together. And as Michael Afton began his quest for revenge, he would discover that the truth was even darker than he had imagined. The underground facility where Sister Location took place was more than just a testing ground for animatronics. It was a laboratory, a place where William Afton conducted his most twisted experiments. The Scooper, the Remnant, the fusion of souls, these were all part of his quest for immortality. He believed that by harnessing the power of Remnant, he could cheat death. But his experiments came at a cost. The souls trapped in the animatronics were suffering, and their pain fueled their desire for revenge. William had created monsters, and they were coming for him. Michael Afton's survival was a testament to the power of Remnant, but it was also a curse. He was alive, but he wasn't truly living. His body was decaying, his soul was tormented, and his only purpose was to stop his father. It was a grim existence, but Michael accepted it. He knew he was the only one who could end William's reign of terror. And so, with his rotting body and unyielding resolve, Michael set out on his journey. The events of Sister Location had set the stage for the final act, and Michael was determined to see it through to the end. But the road ahead was fraught with danger. The animatronics, now free from the facility, were loose in the world. Molten Freddy and Scrap Baby were out there, driven by their own agendas, and William Afton, the man behind it all, was still at large. The battle was far from over, and the horrors were only beginning. Michael Afton's quest for revenge would take him to the darkest corners of Freddy Fazbear's legacy, and the truth he uncovered would change everything. But that's a story for another time. For now, the events of Sister Location stand as a chilling reminder of the cost of William Afton's experiments and the resilience of those who survived them. By 2023, the legacy of Freddy Fazbear's Pizza had become a tangled web of tragedy, horror, and unanswered questions. The animatronics, once symbols of childhood joy, were now vessels of agony and rage, haunted by the souls of the dead and driven by the malice of the living. Enter Henry Emily, the co-founder of the original Fredbear's Family Diner, who had spent decades watching his creation spiral into chaos. This was the year he decided to end it all, once and for all. His plan was simple in concept, but devastating in execution. He would build a trap disguised as a pizzeria, lure the remaining animatronics inside, and burn everything to the ground. This was Freddy Fazbear's Pizzeria Simulator, the final chapter in a story that had been decades in the making. Henry's plan hinged on deception. He created a fake business front, advertising a franchise opportunity for anyone willing to manage a new Freddy Fazbear's location. But this wasn't a chance for revival or redemption. It was a carefully crafted ruse designed to draw in the rogue animatronics still roaming the world. These weren't the classic Freddy, Bonnie, Chica, and Foxy from the original pizzeria. These were twisted, broken versions of their former selves, each carrying their own dark history. Henry knew they would come, driven by their programming or their hunger for new victims. And he was right. Michael Afton, the son of William Afton, and a man who had already endured more than his share of horror, stumbled into Henry's trap without realizing it. Still haunted by his father's crimes and his own role in the Afton family's downfall, Michael applied for the manager position at the pizzeria. To him, it was just another job, another attempt to make sense of the chaos his family had unleashed. But Henry had chosen him deliberately. Michael's presence was essential to the plan, though he wouldn't understand why until it was too late. The first to arrive was Scraptrap, a decayed and grotesque version of Spring Bonnie. This was William Afton himself, the man behind the murders, the creator of the nightmare. After surviving the fire at Fazbear's Fright years earlier, he had returned more monstrous than ever. Scraptrap was drawn to the pizzeria by the promise of a new hunting ground, a place where he could continue his reign of terror. What he didn't know was that this would be his final hunt. Next came Scrap Baby, the twisted remnant of Circus Baby, the animatronic designed to capture and kill children. But Scrap Baby wasn't just a machine. She was Elizabeth Afton, William's daughter, whose soul had been trapped inside the animatronic after a tragic accident at Circus Baby's Pizza World. Scrap Baby arrived at the pizzeria seeking something: redemption, revenge, or perhaps just an end to her suffering. Her motivations were complex, a mix of her father's malice and her own lingering humanity. Then there was Molten Freddy, a horrifying amalgamation of the fun-time animatronics from Sister Location. These machines, originally designed to kidnap and kill, had merged into a single entity, their voices overlapping in a cacophony of madness. Molten Freddy was drawn to the pizzeria by the same forces that brought the others: the promise of new prey, the chance to continue their dark purpose. The final piece of the puzzle was Lefty, a custom animatronic Henry had designed for one specific purpose: to capture the puppet, also known as Charlotte Emily, Henry's own daughter. The puppet had been a central figure in the Freddy Fazbear saga, guiding the souls of the dead and protecting the innocent. But Henry knew she couldn't be allowed to roam free any longer. Lefty was built to contain her, to bring her to the pizzeria where she could finally rest. Henry monitored everything from afar, watching as each animatronic took its place in his carefully laid trap. He didn't intervene directly. Instead, he relied on Michael to manage the pizzeria, completing tasks and upgrades that would ensure the animatronics remained contained. Michael, still unaware of Henry's true plan, did his job diligently, unaware that he was playing a crucial role in the endgame. The pizzeria itself was a facade, a shell designed to look like a functioning business. Customers never came, and the animatronics were never meant to entertain. Instead, they roamed the building, their movements unpredictable and dangerous. Michael's job was to keep them at bay, using a combination of surveillance, maintenance, and quick thinking. He didn't know why the animatronics were there or what they wanted. He just knew he had to survive. Henry's plan was meticulous, but it wasn't without risk. The animatronics were cunning, driven by their own agendas and the lingering remnants of the souls inside them. Scraptrap, in particular, was a wild card, a monster who had already cheated death once. Henry knew he couldn't afford to underestimate him. Every move had to be calculated, every detail perfect. As the days passed, the tension inside the pizzeria grew. Michael's tasks became more difficult, the animatronics more aggressive. Scrap Baby's voice echoed through the halls, a mix of innocence and menace. Molten Freddy's laughter was a constant reminder of the horrors lurking in the shadows. Lefty remained silent, a stark contrast to the chaos around it. And Scraptrap was always watching, waiting for the right moment to strike. Henry watched it all unfold, his heart heavy with the weight of what he was about to do. This wasn't just about destroying the animatronics. It was about ending the cycle of violence, the legacy of pain that had defined Freddy Fazbear's Pizza for so long. He knew there would be no happy ending, no redemption for the souls trapped inside the machines. But there could be closure, a chance for them to finally rest. Michael, still oblivious to the truth, continued to play his part. He upgraded the pizzeria, installed security measures, and did his best to keep the animatronics under control. But the cracks were starting to show. The stress was taking its toll, and the whispers of the animatronics were impossible to ignore. He began to suspect that there was more to this job than he had been told, but he couldn't bring himself to walk away. Something kept him there, something he couldn't quite explain. And then the final piece fell into place. Lefty, the animatronic designed to capture the puppet, activated. The puppet, Charlotte Emily, had been a guiding force in the Freddy Fazbear saga, her soul bound to the animatronic that had protected the children murdered by William Afton. But now she was trapped inside Lefty, brought to the pizzeria by her own father. Henry's heart ached at the thought of what he was about to do, but he knew it was necessary. The puppet had to be contained, her role in the story brought to an end. With all the animatronics in place, Henry's plan was ready. The pizzeria was a powder keg, waiting for the spark that would set it off. Michael, still unaware of the truth, was the final piece of the puzzle. His role wasn't just to manage the pizzeria. It was to be there when the end came, to witness the final act of a story that had defined his life. Henry's voice echoed through the building, calm and resolute. "It's time to end this," he said. "This is where it all comes together. This is where the story concludes." But for Michael, the story was far from over. As the pizzeria began to burn, he realized the truth. This wasn't just a trap for the animatronics. It was a trap for him, too. Henry's plan had always included Michael, a man who had been both a victim and a participant in the Afton family's legacy. As the flames consumed the building, Michael's fate hung in the balance, a final twist in a story that had been decades in the making. The pizzeria simulator was more than just a game. It was the culmination of everything that had come before, a final act of destruction and redemption. Henry's plan was brutal, but it was necessary. The animatronics had to be destroyed, the souls inside them released. And Michael had to face the consequences of his choices to confront the legacy of his family. As the fire raged, the animatronics screamed, their voices a mix of pain and relief. Scraptrap roared in defiance, refusing to accept his end. Scrap Baby cried out, her voice a haunting echo of the child she had once been. Molten Freddy's laughter turned to screams, the madness finally silenced, and Lefty remained silent, the puppet's soul finally at peace. Henry watched it all from afar, his heart heavy but resolute. This was the end, the conclusion of a story that had begun so many years ago. The flames consumed everything, leaving nothing but ash and memories. And in that moment, the legacy of Freddy Fazbear's Pizza was finally laid to rest. Scraptrap, the mangled remnant of William Afton, wasn't done yet. Even in his broken state, he was still the major manipulator, the architect of so much suffering. He began to subtly influence the environment, twisting the pizzeria's systems to his advantage. This wasn't just survival, it was control. He wanted to reclaim his power, to continue his twisted experiments. But this time, he wasn't the only player in the game. Scrap Baby, his own creation, had her own agenda. She spoke of wanting to make her father proud, but her words carried a darker edge. Was she seeking approval, or was she wrestling with the weight of her own actions? Her motivations were conflicted, a mix of loyalty and rebellion. She was a reflection of William's influence, but also a product of her own choices. Then there was Molten Freddy, a chaotic amalgamation of animatronic parts and restless spirits. His behavior was erratic, unpredictable. He posed a constant threat to Michael, who was now working inside the pizzeria, trying to piece together the truth. Molten Freddy wasn't just a danger, he was a reminder of the horrors that had unfolded over the years. He was a living, breathing, well, not literally, testament to the failures of Fazbear Entertainment. And amidst all this chaos, Lefty, the animatronic designed to capture the puppet, succeeded in its mission. The puppet, the spirit of Charlotte Emily, was now contained within Lefty's shell. It was a bittersweet victory. Charlotte had been a protector, a guardian, but now she was trapped, her fate tied to the very animatronic that was meant to keep her safe. But the real mastermind behind this final act wasn't William Afton, it was Henry Emily, Charlotte's father. Henry had been watching, planning, waiting for the right moment to end the nightmare once and for all. He delivered a pre-recorded monologue, his voice calm but filled with resolve. He revealed his plan to trap the animatronics in the pizzeria and destroy them, along with himself. This wasn't just about vengeance, it was about justice, about ending the cycle of pain that had consumed so many lives. Henry's words were a confession, a reckoning. He acknowledged his own failures, his role in the tragedies that had unfolded. But he also made it clear that this was the end. No more hiding, no more running. The animatronic menace would be eradicated, no matter the cost. And then he activated the pizzeria's built-in incinerator. The flames roared to life, engulfing everything in their path. This is Scraptrap, Scrap Baby, Molten Freddy, Lefty. They were all caught in the inferno. The heat was intense, the destruction absolute. This wasn't just a fire, it was a purge, a cleansing. The animatronics, once symbols of joy and wonder, were now reduced to ash. Their spirits, trapped for so long, were finally released. But the cost was high. Michael, still inside the pizzeria, listened to Henry's final words. He realized the truth of his father's crimes, the depth of William's depravity. It was a moment of clarity, but also of despair. Michael had spent his life trying to undo his father's mistakes, but now he understood that some things couldn't be fixed. The weight of it all was crushing. The pizzeria collapsed, its structure unable to withstand the flames. The Fazbear legacy, once a cornerstone of childhood memories, was now nothing more than rubble. The animatronic threat was gone, but so was any hope of redemption. Henry's sacrifice had ensured that the nightmare would end, but it had also erased the possibility of closure for those who had suffered. The story of Fazbear Entertainment was over, but its impact would linger, a shadow over the lives it had touched. And yet, even in the ashes, there were questions left unanswered. The spirits of the children had been freed, but what about the others? What about the souls still tied to the animatronics, the ones who had been forgotten? The fire had destroyed the physical manifestations of the horror, but the scars remained. The story of Freddy Fazbear's Pizza was a cautionary tale, a reminder of the consequences of greed, neglect, and unchecked ambition. It was a story of loss, of pain, of the lengths people would go to in the pursuit of power. But it was also a story of resilience, of the human spirit's ability to endure, to fight back against the darkness. As the flames died down and the smoke cleared, the world moved on. The pizzeria was gone, but its legacy remained. The animatronics were destroyed, but their memory lived on in the stories people told, in the rumors that circulated, in the nightmares that haunted those who had lived through it. The Fazbear saga was over, but its impact would be felt for generations to come. And somewhere, in the quiet stillness of the night, the echoes of their laughter could still be heard, a reminder of what had been lost and what could never be regained. But this wasn't just the end of a story, it was the beginning of a new chapter. The animatronics were gone, but the questions remained. What had driven William Afton to commit such atrocities? What had motivated Henry Emily to sacrifice himself? And what had Michael Afton learned from it all? The answers were buried in the ashes, waiting to be uncovered. The story of Freddy Fazbear's Pizza was over, but the search for understanding was just beginning. And as the world moved forward, the lessons of the past would continue to shape the future, a reminder of the cost of unchecked ambition and the power of redemption. The fire had burned away the old, but it had also cleared the way for the new. The animatronics were gone, but their spirits had been freed. The pizzeria was destroyed, but its legacy lived on. And as the dust settled, the world began to heal, slowly, painfully, but surely. The story of Freddy Fazbear's Pizza was a tragedy, but it was also a testament to the resilience of the human spirit. It was a reminder that even in the darkest of times, there is still hope, still the possibility of redemption. And as the world moved on, the lessons of the past would continue to guide the way, a beacon of light in the darkness, a reminder that even in the face of unimaginable horror, there is still the possibility of a brighter tomorrow. And so, the story of Freddy Fazbear's Pizza came to an end, not with a bang, but with a whisper. The animatronics were gone, but their memory lived on. The pizzeria was destroyed, but its legacy remained. And as the world moved forward, the lessons of the past would continue to shape the future, a reminder of the cost of unchecked ambition and the power of redemption. The fire had burned away the old, but it had also cleared the way for the new. The animatronics were gone, but their spirits had been freed. The pizzeria was destroyed, but its legacy lived on. And as the dust settled, the world began to heal, slowly, painfully, but surely. The story of Freddy Fazbear's Pizza was a tragedy, but it was also a testament to the resilience of the human spirit. It was a reminder that even in the darkest of times, there is still hope, still the possibility of redemption. And as the world moved on, the lessons of the past would continue to guide the way, a beacon of light in the darkness, a reminder that even in the face of unimaginable horror, there is still the possibility of a brighter tomorrow. And so, The story of Freddy Fazbear's Pizza came to an end, not with a bang, but with a whisper. The animatronics were gone, but their memory lived on. The pizzeria was destroyed, but its legacy remained. And as the world moved forward, the lessons of the past would continue to shape the future, a reminder of the cost of unchecked ambition and the power of redemption. The fire had burned away the old, but it had also cleared the way for the new. The animatronics were gone, but their spirits had been freed. The pizzeria was destroyed, but its legacy lived on. And as the dust settled, the world began to heal, slowly, painfully, but surely. The story of Freddy Fazbear's Pizza was a tragedy, but it was also a testament to the resilience of the human spirit. It was a reminder that even in the darkest of times, there is still hope, still the possibility of redemption. And as the world moved on, the lessons of the past would continue to guide the way, a beacon of light in the darkness, a reminder that even in the face of unimaginable horror, there is still the possibility of a brighter tomorrow. And so, the story of Freddy Fazbear's Pizza came to an end, not with a bang, but with a whisper. The animatronics were gone, but their memory lived on. The pizzeria was destroyed, but its legacy remained. And as the world moved forward, the lessons of the past would continue to shape the future, a reminder of the cost of unchecked ambition and the power of redemption. The fire had burned away the old, but it had also cleared the way for the new. The animatronics were gone, but their spirits had been freed. The pizzeria was destroyed, but its legacy lived on. And as the dust settled, the world began to heal, slowly, painfully, but surely. The story of Freddy Fazbear's Pizza was a tragedy, but it was also a testament to the resilience of the human spirit. It was a reminder that even in the darkest of times, there is still hope, still the possibility of redemption. And as the world moved on, the lessons of the past would continue to guide the way, a beacon of light in the darkness, a reminder that even in the face of unimaginable horror, there is still the possibility of a brighter tomorrow. After the fiery finale of Pizzeria Simulator in 2023, it seemed like William Afton's story had reached its end. The man behind the murders, the architect of so much suffering, had finally met his match in the flames meant to purge Fazbear Entertainment's sins. But for Afton, death wasn't the end. It was the beginning of something far worse. Sometime after 2023, his soul found itself trapped in a nightmare unlike anything he'd ever created, a personalized purgatory known as the Ultimate Custom Night, or UCN. This wasn't just a prison, it was a meticulously crafted hell designed by one of his victims to ensure he paid for every life he'd taken. The UCN realm manifests as a twisted version of Freddy Fazbear's Pizza, specifically the security office where so many nights had been spent fending off animatronics. But this office is no ordinary workplace. It's a nightmarish reflection of Afton's crimes, filled with animatronics that represent his past atrocities. Every shift is endless, every attack relentless. There's no escape, no reprieve, just an unending cycle of torment. The orchestrator of this punishment is heavily implied to be the spirit of Golden Freddy, one of Afton's earliest and most vengeful victims. This spirit, often referred to as Cassidy, has one goal: to make Afton suffer as she and so many others did.